Hello everyone, welcome to What If Naruto Was Son of Meliodas and Elizabeth Part 1. Before we start, please go support Franklin Jr. LeBron for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Naruto is a male. Naruto will be the eldest son of Meliodas and Elizabeth, being Tristan's twin brother and older by minutes. Prologue. This story begins in Britain. It's centered on the Kingdom of Lion, where a young boy with silver-gray hair was running around the streets, causing a great deal of noise. This boy, possibly 7 or 8 years old, wore a blue shirt and brown shorts. His eyes were heterochromatic, with the right eye being blue and the left eye being green. "Friends, come out!" the boy shouted as he entered an alleyway, while behind him a man in armor ran after him. "Friends! I've just discovered an evil plan that will plunge lionés into darkness. That's why I'm being chased by a henchman," he said, but fell down when he heard the voice of the knight searching for him. Peeking his head out from beside his friends, he saw the knight pass by. "Tristan, when you refer to henchmen, were you talking about the knights of the kingdom?" "It's a henchman. I told you." "Okay, everyone calm down and listen. I heard that tonight the criminals from the wanted bulletins called the 7 deadly sins will be meeting," he said in a snarky tone. "I heard it from a light-voiced maiden. They must be plotting to take over lionés." The boys looked at him strangely as the young man named Tristan Lionés struck a strange pose. "That's why I, as a prince, can't. As a holy knight, I must keep the peace. So I'll catch them. Let's go home," one of the young men said as they all walked to the other side of the alley. "Goodbye, Tristan. It's time for dinner," said the girl in the group as she said goodbye. "What's more important? Dinner or peace?" None of the boys paid attention to the silver-haired boy, who just frowned sweetly and decided to leave. Already inside the lioness castle, where the kingdom's royal family lived. "Fine. I'll catch them myself," he said, walking slowly so as not to be noticed. Or so he thought, because at that moment someone grabbed him from behind. "Where did you go to play, Tristan? We've all been looking for you," said the woman who grabbed the little boy. The woman had gray hair like the boy's, golden eyes with a white 3-helix symbol inside, and she wore a blue dress with white trim. "Mother." The woman named Elizabeth Lioness smiled at her young son. "If you're restless, you should be calmer like Naruto." The boy was confused by this. "Everyone?" he wondered until he finally understood. Moving away from his mother, the boy began to look around worriedly. "Who are you looking for? The 7 deadly sins?" I asked, alert. The woman was confused by her son's actions. Well, yes." The boy was alarmed by the response. "What? They must have found out about their plan. I should tell Mom," he thought, alert. "Mom, I have to tell you. Honestly, my dad and the sins are going to overthrow the kingdom tonight, and dash." The boy didn't finish when he was interrupted by a voice. "Tristan, where did you go? We were looking for you," said an apparent blonde boy with green eyes and a white cape with a black collar. Behind him were 4 more people, one being an adult with gray hair with a blue tone and red clothes that were a little short for his size. Next to him was an apparent girl with pink hair and glasses. The last 2 were a large woman with brown hair and 2 ponytails. The last was a man with fine brown hair who was wearing a high-class suit. "There they are. The 7 deadly sins." The giant woman named Diana, the sin of envy, approached the boy. "He's so cute, Tristan. He looks just like both of them." "Yes, although it's nothing like ours," said the winged man named King, the sin of sloth, smiling. "Despite being a child, he has a great personality, as expected from the son of Meliodas and Elizabeth Dano," said the pink-haired girl, named Galda, the sin of lust. "Diana. And where's the other birthday boy?" the giant asked, looking around. "How strange. I told him he was supposed to be here on his birthday. Although I'm usually always studying, so it's normal for him to forget." The blonde man named Meliodas, captain of the 7 deadly sins and the sin of wrath, transformed into chibi form. "Maybe I lied to you so you wouldn't remember today was your birthday," That made the other sons fall flat on their faces. Aha! I knew you lied to me, Dad! Shouted the voice of a gray-haired boy as if he were a younger brother, only his was short, the same shape as the blonde in the room. His eyes were the same as Tristan's. Only the colors were opposite, where Tristan's left eye is green, his is blue, and Tristan's right eye being green, Naruto's is blue. The young man was wearing black shorts with straps on the shoulders and a white shirt. Meliodas smiled at the sight of his eldest son for a minute. Naruto. The silver-haired man smiled. Hey, Dad. Everyone watched the interaction between father and son. Gala looked at the boy. Yeah, it's also very surprising. The captain's sons are incredible. The rag smiled. Already tired of everything being taken lightly, Tristan shouted, earning everyone's gaze. Huh? What's wrong, Tristan? Meliodas asked doubtfully, seeing his son's outburst. I already know everything, he said in chibi form. We're criminals wanted throughout the kingdom, and we're planning to invade tonight. All the sins and Meliodas were about to laugh while the cute little Naruto barked his head in doubt at what his younger brother had just said. Tristan, did you finish the book I gave you? The young man with long, gray hair scratched his head. It wasn't necessary. I saw more than enough. Meliodas stopped laughing and an idea came to his mind. Sate. When Tristan heard his father's tone of voice, he stood on guard. So, revealing our plan to you is interesting. But since you know, you can't stay alive! Tristan fell to his knees upon hearing this. After all, it was true, my father is a villain, he said, disappointed, while Naruto, holding his mother's hand, smiled, not understanding anything but finding his father's villainous behavior amusing. Diana, Captain. Didn't you tell him anything? Meliodas left his evil form and went into chibi form. Nah, it's more fun that way, he said playfully. Behind him, Ban cursed why he didn't think of the same idea. Suddenly, Tristan charged at his father, who resisted his blows as if he were a child's game. Don't worry. The Holy Knight Tristan will take care of defeating my father. As he stopped attacking, Meliodas looked confused. Do you want to be a Holy Knight? Tristan, yes. Because it's the Holy Knight who takes down the bad guys. But enough talking. Let's go outside, I'll defeat them all. Elizabeth looked at a clock on the wall. That's right. It's time to go outside, she said, taking Naruto and Tristan's hand. Lara walked outside. Everyone else in the room did the same until they reached one of the castle's balconies that overlooked the street. Both Naruto and Tristan were confused by the fireworks in the sky. Tristan, Naruto, come here, Meliodas called to both boys, who nodded. Upon reaching their father's side, they were surprised to see many villagers and knights of the kingdom standing on the street below the balcony, greeting them and saying, Happy birthday? Naruto wondered. That's right. Today is her 8th birthday, Elizabeth said, hugging him around the neck. Naruto smiled at this. So this is why Dad lied to me, he said happily, beginning to wave cheerfully to the people who passed by. Everyone followed in little Naruto's footsteps and began to wave to the crowd of people. Tristan. Mom, why are you all clapping for him? He's the villain, she said, pointing at her dad, who was cheerfully waving at everyone alongside a smiling and happy Naruto. Ben approached the boy, smiling. Look, kid. Do you really think they'd like a villain? Tristan stared at his father and older brother for a while. You won't fool me, he said relentlessly. He's almost as tall as me. He's careless. He's a stubborn baby. Everyone fell for that while Meliodas greeted everyone in chibi form. He likes my mom's breasts. And I left them a long time ago. That's true. What do you both want for your birthday? Naruto and Tristan looked at each other and smiled. Your sacred treasure. Denied, Meliodas said to his children, who slumped. Naruto. Well, I want to learn how to cook, the silver-haired boy said happily. Meliodas looked at him with doubt about his request, but it was his mother who asked the question. Elizabeth, why do you want to learn to cook, Naruto-chan? The gray-haired boy smiled proudly. Henriksen said the first step in making poison was learning how to cook, and I want to make poisons as strong as Dad's. Everyone looked at him with even more surprise. But the captain doesn't do Vendash. The ancient immortal stopped. Ha ha, he's referring to food, ha ha. The once immortal, gray-haired boy couldn't stop laughing, making the others look at him strangely. Why do you want to make poisons just like you, Dad, Naru? The boy smiled. A week ago, Dad made me a pie for being able to use healing magic strong enough to heal a root. I went with my friends to celebrate with my pie, but a lion crossed our path. I threw the pie at it so I could escape, but when the lion ate it, I think it fell down dead. He told his story in chibi form to the others, who only looked at Meliodas, who was in chibi form too. Meliodas, and I thought that pie turned out well. Now I know it didn't. He thought angrily in his classic chibi form. Elizabeth, at his side, now understood the reason why Meliodas was more active in the kitchen. Naruto, you know that pie was for you, right? Naruto looked at Diana and shook his head. No, miss. It was all my dad's plan, he said, as if Meliodas was the most amazing person. All Meliodas' / mine? Naruto nodded. Of course. Dad knew I'd run into a lion, so he made the pie with a strong poison so that when I gave him the pie, the lion would die and we'd be saved. Isn't that right, Dad? He asked excitedly, looking at Meliodas, who smiled. That's right. I figured it all out, he said, pointing proudly at his chest. Naruto's eyes lit up at his dad's incredible abilities, while the others looked at him with a look of you don't even believe it on their faces. Well, Naruto, I think cooking at this age isn't appropriate, but I can teach you when you grow up, Elizabeth said to her son, who smiled. With that, Gauther approached both twins. Good. It's time for the gifts from the 7 deadly sins, our true story, he said, holding a purple lightning bolt in his hand. The lightning split into 2 and fell on both of their heads, causing a wave of memories to flood both boys' minds. The memories ranged from Meliodas, Ban, and Gaur flying through the sky to a boy with a spear protecting an injured Diana, and one of Hawk, a talking pig Naruto knew was protecting his parents' livestock on the ground. Others were like Elizabeth hugging a dead Meliodas with 7 to 8 swords in his chest, a Meliodas with a black mark on his forehead fighting a being in red armor, and finally, the 7 deadly sins toasting next to a black-haired woman who looked familiar to Naruto and a thin man with brown hair and glasses. Tears streamed down the heterochromatic eyes of both boys as they stared at each other. Without knowing why, they both smiled at each other in joy. Perhaps because of the memories, perhaps because of the happy ending, perhaps just because they found it funny. But they both smiled at the same time. And with that, the birthday party for both twins continued until late, when Naruto Tristan shared with his friends and the adults drank with each other. Chapter 1. We found ourselves in an almost completely dark room, which was barely illuminated by the light of the bright and beautiful moon that entered through one of the open windows of the silent house. In the seats of the dark room sat 5 figures, seemingly obscured by the lack of light, their locations only given away by the brightness of their eyes. The 5 were quietly conversing with each other casually. You know why I was called here, right? Asked the shadowy figure sitting in the main chair opposite the others. Judging by his voice and height, he was a man no more than 20 or 25 years old with green eyes. You must have seen something important to us, right? The one who spoke was one of the figures sitting in the chair to the right of the first shadow, who shared the chair with another shadow. From her voice and height, it was easy to deduce that she was a young teenager of 16 or 17 years old, easily seduced by her impulsive and proud tone of voice. Her eyes were a brilliant blue, with a pearly glow from the moonlight that hit them. Strangely, both of them in the same seat did seem to be people obscured by the lack of light, unlike the others who only seemed to be shadows. Yes, replied the shadow that seemed to be the leader of everyone present. Although it's not directly about chaos, it is something about the second hand, he said calmly. Is it something more important than usual? The second shadow on the right armchair, which was next to the shadow that was a girl, asked. From his voice and height, it was just as easy to deduce as the other that it was a boy around 15 or 16 years old, although from his tone of voice, one could tell he was very calm and serene for his age. His eyes were a light, bright green, the right one being the only visible eye. The shadow that appeared to be the leader nodded calmly, while one of the voices to the left, sitting on a lonely sofa, spoke. Something so important as to hold a forced meeting using transfer. Leaving our bodies completely defenseless? He asked with apparent curiosity. The shadow, whose voice and height were descriptive of an adult woman around 18 to 20 years old, revealed that she was charming, deceptive, and calm, but mysterious. The color of her eyes was a purple that bordered on magenta, but a pink hue that lightened the dark pupils. We haven't met like this for a year because of the danger of my technique when I leave the body in the form of a soul. It must clearly be important, the green-eyed shadow said calmly. The bright blue-eyed female shadow nodded in agreement. Of course, you must be right. The leader would never put them in danger over something unimportant. She supported the shadow at her side. After that, no one else spoke. No more interruptions to speak. The now-known leader of the group spoke calmly. As always, I had a dream about the future, but this time it was about an invasion. The other four shadows in the room were confused by this. Invasion? The gray-eyed female voice asked doubtfully. What? So someone's going to invade us again? With all due respect. This makes no sense. The shadow with its single green eye said calmly and serenely. What's so special about this particular invasion? I mean, we get invaded by bounty hunters 2 or 3 times a week because of our high bounties. The leader nodded in agreement with his subordinate. The invasion certainly isn't our responsibility. Actually, it hardly concerns anyone in the group, he said calmly. He looked at the shadow of the green eye when he mentioned. Almost. Everyone noticed their leader's glance at his companion, who seemed oblivious to the stares. Placing his hand in his fist, he asked the question the leader had been waiting for. Is the invasion for Lion? Yes, the blue-eyed chief replied without hesitation. The kingdom we discovered 6 months ago is allied with Camelot. Sarkot has decided to unexpectedly attack Lion. So it will be here in 7 days and 6 nights. The shadow stared at the one-eyed, green-tinted shadow, who seemed to be thinking. And who wins? Asked the shadow in the solitary chair with magenta or purple eyes. Even though it was a midnight attack, at a disadvantage because their most viable command centers were instantly neutralized and most of the knights were asleep, lionés took the victory because their king and queen managed to eliminate the threats, although it came at a great cost. Like what? The blue-eyed female shadow looked at her green-eyed seatmate, who was the one who asked the direct question. The least important losses to you were the apprentice knights, the civilians, the holy knights, and… The leader stopped to look at his subordinate, who was still thoughtful. Seeing the look, he nodded as the names continued. The most important ones for you were Baltra lionés, Margareth lionés, Hendrickson, Dreyfus, and Elizabeth. The room fell silent at the last name. No one said anything, knowing how serious the matter was, until, after a few minutes, the blue-eyed female shadow stared at her companion's face with one unresponsive green eye. Touching his shoulder hesitantly, this caused the boy's power to surge forth. The power was so great that a cloud of miasma formed around him along with the enormous air pressure it generated. No one in the room seemed to be affected except for the blue-eyed female shadow, but she herself didn't seem as affected, just annoyed. But even so, someone intervened. Naru, calm down. The calm and sweet voice coming from the purple-eyed female shadow sounded in the dark room. The boy's power lowered in an instant, and his visible eye, which had turned black with purple tones, calmed down. I'm calm now, Miss Kafka, said the man now known as Naru, or Naruto of Lion, the eldest son of the Queen of Lion, Elizabeth of Lion, and the King of Lion, Meliodas, with clear respect in his voice. The purple-eyed shadow named Kafka gave a kind but incognito smile that went unnoticed because it was pure shadow. Fine, Naru, he said calmly. Now, what are we going to do about it? He asked doubtfully. It was obvious they would do something. If the deaths involved one of their family members, of course they would intervene in something, directly or indirectly. The leader nodded calmly. Besides being Naruto's relatives, lionés is vital to the fall of Chaos, he said, looking at Naruto's shadow, Kafka's, and the shadow still beside Naruto. Naruto, Kafka, and Silver Wolf. You must leave for Sarkot tomorrow at noon. Kafka's shadow smiled imperceptibly, but the lioness seemed to notice. Of course, Naru. My mission in the Tarzald Kingdom is over. I'll leave tomorrow at dawn. It should take me about 10 minutes. The response earned a nod from the green-eyed man. The last shadow of the group who hadn't spoken until now smiled. What a shame my mission only ends in a week. He spoke with feigned sadness, his voice evident in a feminine voice. Given his height, it was easy to see that he had eyes with a strange heterochromia. Instead of each eye being a different color, both eyes had two colors, pink on the top and blue on the bottom of the pupil. Okay, bye, he said, deactivating the transfer technique and disappearing into shadow. Kafka's shadow looked at the two young people on the love seat. Goodbye. Sleep well, Naru. See you at dawn, he said, disappearing into the shadows, leaving only Naruto, the female shadow with bright blue eyes, and the male shadow with star-like blue eyes. The starry-eyed leader looked at his subordinates. With a nod, his shadow also vanished, but instead of simply disappearing, it flew out the window into the starry sky of the dark night. With the last shadow of the room gone, the house lights came on, revealing the physical appearance of the house's only inhabitants. Are you okay? Asked the girl with bright blue eyes that allowed her figure to be seen thanks to the light. The girl known as Silverwolf was a young woman of about 16 years old with dark gray hair tied in a ponytail with a bow that resembled bunny ears. On the back of her forehead she had purple and blue glasses and in her mouth a piece of gum. Her clothing consisted of a white top with a sleeve on the left side while underneath it was another top, but this one was black and the sleeve was on the right side. Over that was a jacket that reached over her stomach and was almost completely open, revealing her black and white top. The jacket was black on the outside, but purple on the inside, with apparent metals on the left side. Her pants were short black shorts, the right side shorter than the left, revealing mesh shorts. On both hands she had black fingerless gloves that were clearly made of leather, and she was wearing very high black boots and on her left foot some tights sticking out of the boots. A little. But I'll be better tomorrow. The lioness calmly responded to the question, no longer a child. He went from that friendly young man of 8 to the adult of over 16 years old with a calm and serene demeanor. His hair was the same silver, and his only visible eye was green, unchanged. His hairstyle had changed, however. Now it was no longer the same as his father's, but rather unique. It was still the same cut, but now it was to one side covering his blue eye from normal vision. His clothing consisted of a white jacket with purple edges and details. Leaving the jacket completely open was a black high-necked shirt that covered more than half of the neck with a white line inside where the zipper went to open. His pants were long white ones that at first glance it was possible to see that they were made of a fine fabric. Finally, he had some high-class black shoes typical of royalty. The girl looked at the silver-haired man's face and noticed the concern he was hiding. But even so, he just nodded. Silverwolf, sure, if you say so, she said calmly. Now take me to bed. My feet are asleep from all the time I spent sitting here, she said, and the boy didn't seem to even hear her. Angry, she laid her head on the boy's lap so he'd have to comply with her request, but even then Naruto did nothing but yawn, which he elegantly covered with his hand. Naruto calmly took a cup of tea that had been on the table since the team meeting began. Calmly sipping his tea, he took 2 sugar cubes and added them to his tea, stirring them. He took another sip of tea. The girl looked at this angrily, at the lioness' actions, which were clearly meant to annoy her. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Her response was a slight smile from the lioness, who looked at her with his single green eye shining in amusement. Naruto, who knows? The answer angered Silverwolf. You're an idiot, she said angrily, taking her head off Lioness's legs. Walking to the living room door, she turned around to look at the calm silver-haired man in confusion. Aren't you coming? The boy nodded. Sure, he said, putting his tea on the table and walking toward the gray-haired girl. Smiling slightly, the girl snorted at both of them, sure, as she walked toward the shared room with a gigantic bed that was Naruto, Silverwolf, and Kafka's shared bed. None of them minded sharing a cloak. They had known each other for over 3 years, so something like this was normal. Even when Naruto was the only man, the boy didn't seem fazed by things like that. Naruto lay down on the bed, and Silver Wolf walked toward a door in the room that led to the bathroom. Naruto looked at the ceiling calmly. It's been over 5 years. How will Mom react when she sees me? He thought with doubt. It was clear he'd be happy. I could say a lot, but the most important thing was how he'd react to learning everything that's happened to him, and everything he's done in the 5 years he's been missing from lionés. They must think I'm dead. The wanted posters stopped being posted around Britain 8 months ago. Her thoughts stopped when a changed and ready Silver Wolf emerged from the bathroom. She was no longer wearing her regular clothes, but a more comfortable sleepwear consisting of a long-sleeved white shirt that only reached below her breasts, revealing her flat stomach. Her pants were super short mini shorts that clearly showed she wasn't wearing any underwear underneath. On her right foot, she had a black band above her thigh, something she always wore, and Lara finished off with very comfortable white slippers. Okay, now go away. I want to sleep in peace tonight, he said, lying back on the bed peacefully. Naruto said nothing and continued staring at the ceiling doubtfully. Turn off the lights. Naruto sweated a drop. You can do it, he said, and the girl gave him the finger without opening her eyes. Naruto just smiled, his head ticking, but leaving that for tomorrow, he got out of bed and, pressing the button, turned off the lights in the room. When he was about to go back to bed, he saw that Silver Wolf was already asleep. How fast! It was a busy day today, she said, smiling. It's because of things like this that you're strangely needing to sleep. Sleeping through a technique and waking up at the slightest noise isn't as comforting. Not knowing when you want to sleep or when you don't. TSK, annoying, he thought as he leaned back. Saying those words in the strange language, the only visible eye of danger began to slowly close, leaving the last glimpse of the surroundings to be the stars in the sky that were coming through the window. Chapter 2. At the entrance to a kingdom of considerable size, 3 people could be seen. One was clearly Naruto and the other was Silver Wolf, both wearing their common clothes. Meanwhile, next to these 2 was a woman of 18 to 20 years of age, being the oldest of the 3. Her eyes and hair were a dark magenta. Like Silver Wolf, this woman named Kafka had glasses on top of her head, using them as an ornament. Her clothing consisted of a white shirt with several straps across the chest and on her left arm. Her pants were black and super short, while underneath she had super long magenta purple stockings. Her shoes were normal, at least the one on her left foot, since the right one seemed to be a super long boot that was less well fitted. On her hands she had purple gloves and on her shoulders an open jacket with purple flowers on the sleeves. Naruto looked at the woman beside him. Okay, what do we do now? Do we go in or attack directly? Silver Wolf asked, looking at his 2 companions, who looked at each other, unsure. Their leader didn't tell them anything about this part, and without orders they couldn't act. Silver Wolf looked at his companions with a look of contempt. Don't tell me that neither of you has received any other orders. Both Naruto and Miss Kafka shook their heads. Damn! She screamed, annoyed, stamping her feet because she knew what would happen. They would have to go back and contact their leader for some orders. If he wasn't going to give us any more orders besides just coming here, why send us here so suddenly as if it were absolutely necessary? She thought, annoyed. Until something came to her mind, just like it did to the others. Unless I wanted us to do it however we wanted, Naruto said calmly and thoughtfully, his hand on his chin. Silver Wolf smiled at this idea, which was very similar to his own. Kafka smiled calmly. Well done, Naru. Naruto nodded at the woman's praise. Good. So how do we do it? Kafka asked. Naruto began to think, just like Silver Wolf, until ideas came to both of them. Silver Wolf, we can wait until tomorrow and analyze the movement pattern, so I can do a faster, less annoying hack, said the gray-haired girl with great intellect. Naruto nodded at the idea. We'll also be able to deal with the inconvenience better, and fewer innocent people will be involved. Kafka smiled at the 2 adolescents' ideas. Kafka, okay. Everyone activate. Transformation. Naruto and Silver Wolf did as ordered. Noik Amraf Snart, Naruto said as his body began to grow into the appearance of an adult man, apparently 25 to 30 years old, with very long black hair and glowing red eyes. On the part of his forehead, his hair was divided into two bangs, only the one on the left was longer and blocked the view of his eye. His attire consisted of a long-sleeved black suit with a red-lined cape behind it. His pants were long and gray, with a bandage on his right foot and a silver symbol on the right. His suit had brown and gold designs, making it look like the garments of the highest royalty. The strangest thing about his gloves were his gloves. One was a common black glove, and the other was wrapped in bandages. Said Naruto as his body began to grow into the appearance of an adult man of apparent 25 to 30 years old with very long black hair and bright red eyes. Silver Sun, the words of mine. And her body changed too, except instead of growing or increasing in age, her roles and wardrobe only changed slightly, going from a gray-haired woman to a silver-haired woman, with gray eyes instead of her former blue ones. Her wardrobe was a white dress with long, loose sleeves. The inside of the sleeves were dark blue, and the outfit also had small, decorative gold shoulder pads that matched the black and gold belt. The lower part, which was the skirt, was dark blue with black, and had super long black stockings. Her hair, now silver instead of gray, was tied in a super long ponytail, but she still had the black ribbon on her head. Kafka, Noak Amraf Snart. Kafka also began to change. His magenta hair, in a low ponytail, turned reddish and turned into a low braid. He apparently began to age a little older, reaching 25. His eyes were no longer magenta, but yellow with a few red circles inside the pupils. His wardrobe changed to a formal suit that included a black jacket and tie, a white shirt underneath, and black pants with low heels. His eyes were no longer magenta, but yellow with a few red circles inside the pupils, and his wardrobe changed to a formal suit that had a black jacket and tie, a white shirt underneath, and black pants with a. "Well, we should go slowly and without too much fuss," he said coldly, and it would be the now Kafka with his new appearance nicknamed Mikima. Silver Wolf looked at his appearance and nodded. It would be something the deceptive and seductive Kafka would use just to resemble his original appearance, as little as possible. Naruto's now cold eyes in this appearance called Blade looked at Silver Wolf nicknamed Stell. "Fine. We don't know each other," Blade said coldly, entering without looking back. As he took the first step into the entrance, elsewhere a white-haired girl with a red streak became alarmed at the same time as Blade, as he crossed. "Both, she is here." Trying to calm himself so as not to cause a ruckus, he began walking calmly without looking back. While Stell looked at him with a blank face for stopping and walking out of nowhere. "He does take his mantle as an emo avenger very seriously," she said, looking at Mikima, who smiled at her in a very deceptive way. Walking away from the redhead, Stell turned around to start walking away from Mikima with a blank Zara. "Because you both seem like maniacs using your double identity." Mikima saw the girl retreat and smiled that seemingly fake smile. Starting to walk, entering the kingdom, the redhead began to look around. This appearance wouldn't last long. It was only for the first few minutes so the gate guards wouldn't detect them. At least she'd put off the transformation once she was in the kingdom's capital. With Naruto/Blade. This dark-haired man could be seen walking calmly through the kingdom. "This place is very quiet. Is this kingdom really planning to attack Lioness in a week?" he thought doubtfully. Normally, if one kingdom plans to attack the other, the kingdom would normally go into turmoil, activating its defenses in case the enemy plans to counterattack immediately. Normally, civilians are hidden, leaving only those who are going to fight unless. Blade, the entire kingdom is going to fight. He thought seriously. It wouldn't be anything new for a kingdom to force its kingdom to fight. It happened with the demonic kingdom. It also happened with the goddesses in the war 3,000 years ago, where even children fought instead of training. And it only didn't happen with the giants because they are warriors by birth, so their small village itself is warriors. Is this important enough to meet? He shook his head. It was just speculation. Perhaps he was just thinking more. Or perhaps Arthur really does intend to send all the humans from here to Camelot during the battle. TSK, I should have asked the leader what would happen to the kingdom afterward. Ignoring something like that, he decided to keep walking. I must check that first. elsewhere. Meanwhile, that was happening with the black-haired man. In the castle of Lionés, the king of this kingdom could be seen. In front of this king were 3 people, one of whom was a man in red armor with 4 holes in his helmet and a sword on his left side. Next to the armored man was a boy with brown hair and a white streak, wearing a top-tier, light brown suit. He wore glasses to help his vision a bit and black gloves on his hands. His age was probably 18 to 20, and from his complexion, his maturity and seriousness were evident underneath. Next to this boy was a girl with white hair and a red streak. Her outfit consisted of a sleeveless white shirt with 2 black belts over it that connected it to black pants that were cut very tight at the thighs. On her arms, she had 2 sleeves that were not connected to the shirt except for the right one, which barely connected. Her shoes were black and short. Her age was almost 17, making her very developed for her age. The girl seemed oblivious to her surroundings. All she was thinking about was the presence she felt entering the realm a few minutes ago. It was impossible for her to believe it was him. Someone couldn't survive something like that, right? How are the terms, Your Majesty? The boy named Welf spoke in a very serious and simple manner. That brought the girl out of her mind as she remembered what she was doing in this kingdom under the protection and care of the eternal kingdom of Camelot. The king was angered by what the young man had said in the terms of King Arthur's request. Of course not. The boy with brown hair and a streak of white narrowed his eyes. The treaty was that you would help my kingdom through our crisis and change from being your allies. Never that you would send me to attack the greatest power in Britain at this moment. The bespectacled boy said nothing, just casually adjusted his glasses. That's right. But the treaty changed. We can't safely maintain your kingdom if you don't fully unite with Camelot, said the man in red armor. The king became angry. That's not padash. The man was cut off when Welf looked at him seriously, while a golden aura covered him in an intimidating way. The king who saw this aura trembled in fear at the boy's power. I accept your majesty's terms, he said with great fear as he lowered his head. The man in red armor looked at the boy and frowned inwardly. The orders were for him to accept of his own free will. Our ideology is not to force them to come with dash. The boy turned to walk away. I never forced him. I just made him think harder about what he really wanted to do. The person inside the armor smacked his lips in anger. Just because you're Chaos Elite doesn't give you the right to dash. The boy turned to look at him. Shut up, okay? He said, sending the armored man's anger skyward. Topz, let's go, he said as the girl came back to her senses for the second time that day, thinking about the presence that looked so much like an acquaintance, again. Topz! I'm coming, bro, he said, starting to walk after his older brother, while the armored man watched the 2 boys, members of the highest Chaos Elite, retreat. Leaving his anger behind, he followed the young men's path to leave a sweaty king. With Naruto. The boy was calmly sipping coffee in a cafe. The black-haired boy was thinking about the magic he felt less than an hour ago, which was instantly and purposely hidden, and the new magic that exploded in the castle, which instantly calmed and was subsequently hidden. Topz, Welf. They're both here, but they're hiding their magic. They must know we're here, or at least don't want to be disturbed, he thought, sipping his coffee. I preferred tea 1,000 times over, but a cup of coffee never hurt anyone. Especially when you only sleep 2 days a week because you don't need to. I think it's time to go meet Miss Kafka, I thought, remedying my coffee. Leaving 1 gold coin behind, I disappeared in a blur of speed, leaving all the villagers unnoticed. Already on top of one of the houses, the black-haired man began to breathe the same spell as before. Noak Amraf Snart. With that, his height changed, and in a second, he had transformed into a black cat with red eyes. Avoiding any resemblance to his true appearance would be best, especially with them here. Starting to jump around the houses, Naruto, now a cat, began to search for Kafka with his sight and smell. But as expected, he couldn't find her anywhere, causing him to meow. Where would I be if I were Miss Kafka? He thought for a few moments, until an idea came to him. Baking! With that, he resumed his path, hopping between the houses, a normal occurrence for cats, except that he even made a mad dash crossing the entire street below. He sniffed again, but instead of at Kafka, he sniffed at the nearest pastry shop. Miss Kafka liked blueberry and blackberry pies, so it was quite possible, at least to him, that she was in some bakery or pastry shop. Or so he hoped, because she was spending a lot of valuable time betting on that. Cat gotcha / meow, he said, jumping onto the table where the purple-haired girl, who had already taken off her Mikima costume a few minutes ago, was sitting. You know the costume is for you to wear, right? Miss Kafka. The woman looked at the cat on the table and smiled. No one knows our faces beyond those old appearances we used. It'll be fine if it's just for a few minutes, she said calmly. Naruto sighed because Miss Kafka tended to be that way. Although she was very intelligent and a good strategist, she tended to take things very lightly. Fine. I just came to say a few things. Kafka nodded, but before he could speak, she stopped him. Wait a second. Waitress. He calmly called out to the waitress who approached. A blackberry pie. Naruto looked at her and Kafka smiled. Really? The purple-haired woman ignored him as she looked doubtfully at the cat's meow, which seemed very direct to her. Leaving that aside, she said, I'm sorry, but cats aren't allowed. After one attacks His Majesty Shinji. Naruto just frowned. Why do I have to pay for what that other cat did? The woman didn't understand the cat's meows, but she shook her head. I'm sorry, but you can't stay. When the woman was about to pick up the cat, Naruto the cat got into a cat-like attack position, ready to pounce. Until Kafka intervened. Don't worry, the cat won't do anything. You can go now, he said, his eyes shining with a slightly malicious tone, making them appear intimidating to anyone else. The woman's eyes suddenly dimmed, and the waitress nodded without hesitation. Good, your cake will be here shortly. Naruto watched this interaction, not caring at all. Fine. You can tell me now. Naruto nodded. The representatives of Chaos are here. Or rather, two of them are here, he said calmly as he rested his head on his two front paws. And it seems the ambush against Lioness was a sudden order from the king, since the first soldier hasn't moved yet, and it doesn't even seem like the villagers know about it. Kafka, so the explosion of power a few minutes ago was one of them, right? The girl received a nod from the cat. Kafka nodded as he accepted his cake. Giving thanks, he began to eat his cake calmly and delicately. A fitting departure for his class. Well, that tells us it must have been King Arthur's order, but the question is why? Naruto/cat, it's more than clear. It was only to weaken the Lioness kingdom and follow up with an even worse and more powerful attack/meow, meow meow, said/meow the cat calmly. Kafka considered that possibility. True, but we must also remember that King Arthur isn't a man of such simple plans. There's clearly something else going on underneath. The real question is, what is it? Naruto nodded. Suddenly, he and Kafka felt the power of the boy named Welf rise again, and immediately afterward, the power of the white-haired girl with red interiors also exploded. Are they fighting each other? Elsewhere. Both Topaz and Welf could be seen facing each other, both unleashing their power in abundance as the brothers stared each other down. I already told you no, Welf, he said, his tone clearly annoyed. The boy just frowned. You're acting very strange. You clearly sense something or someone from Lion. That would be the only reason for your behavior. If you sense someone from that place, they should be eliminated immediately. Unless you want to protect them, and that's considered treason. Topaz frowned angrily. I told you I only remembered something. I'm not a traitor. The boy didn't seem to believe it. When you were born, I was already taking care of you. I'm 5 years older than you. I know when you're lying and when you're not. I know everything about you, sister. Topaz. If you knew everything about me, we wouldn't be in this situation, brothers, he said, with clear venom in that brother part. Seriously, if you knew everything about me, we wouldn't even be in Camelot. With that, her power intensified into a clear, blazing blue flame. Her older brother didn't seem fazed by the heat of the flames, only frowning at his younger sister's words. Don't be silly. The eternal kingdom of Camelot is the only place we can be with Mom, It's the only place we can be with Conti. Topz, I'd rather they weren't here than just slaughter everyone for some crazy king who thinks he's God, she said angrily as tears fell down her cheeks. Mom wouldn't have wanted this, and the one over there isn't real and you know it. Slap. Chapter 3. Topz, I'd rather they weren't here than just slaughter everyone for some crazy king who thinks he's God, she said angrily as tears fell down her cheeks. Mom wouldn't have wanted this, and the one over there isn't real and you know it. Slap. Topz was shocked by her older brother's blow to her. Take it back. She's Mom and always will be, she said in a serious and angry voice. More tears flowed from the white-haired girl's eyes and fell down her cheek, bruised by the blow. She began to run away from her older brother, who didn't seem to care in the least. Welt simply started walking opposite his sister, with no intention of going after her. This is good for us. Infighting is all we need for our plan, Kafka said as he flew through the sky. Both young men were so focused on their discussion that they didn't notice them flying above them. Their burst of powers also helped them hide their already repressed presence. Although it seems the girl isn't happy with Camelot. That's even better, no Naru. Naruto/Cat didn't respond to the purple-haired girl's question. Maybe so, Miss Kafka. This is beneficial, he said in a serious and very unfriendly manner, something Kafka didn't expect from him, but he didn't give it much importance either. Naruto was always the quiet, serious, calm, and collected type, but when it comes to his past, he is hostile, rude, aggressive, and occasionally impulsive. Kafka, it's time to go back to Sil, Naru. The black-haired man nodded as he used a spell to return to his human form instead of the cat form he was in. Naruto, Itrops Nardalit, he whispered as he and Kafka disappeared in a blur. Elsewhere, Blade and Kafka could be seen appearing on a crowded street. This street seemed to be something rather bizarre. It was a man, apparently a gentleman, frozen and buggy in reality in a very bizarre way. His feet, arms, and head were in places they shouldn't have been, and even his right hand was in the air, more than 10 meters away from the buggy body. Kafka, what happened here? He asked, smiling at the waitress from before. They had only been gone for a few minutes, and had already created a bizarre scene like this. A girl was arguing with 2 knights of the kingdom, but she used a rectangular object and caused this, she said in a terrified tone, and Kafka nodded, regardless of his condition. Blade looked at this with doubt. What happened next? The woman looked at the 6 feet 11 inches, 1.87 meters, tall, dark-haired man. The guard took the girl and removed the strange, noise-making object, she said again, stuttering, worse this time due to the appearance of the tall man next to the purple-haired woman. Blade nodded as Kafka began to walk away, following the woman. Blade looked at her doubtfully. We'll go find her, won't we? Kafka nodded. Yes. They both walked calmly. The problem is knowing where she is. She hides her magic so the knights and representatives on the case don't sense it, but neither do we, Blade said. Kafka smiled. I still have this. Blade, Naruto, looked at the object in the woman's hand with a kind, deceptive smile. Even an intercom? Wasn't that just a one-time thing? He asked with clear doubt. Kafka just smiled as he placed the object in his ear. I'm the one who creates them. Remember? Blade smiled at that. Blade, Naruto, of course, as always being unpredictable. The woman smiled in her usual way, and upon pressing the magical object, a call hologram was activated. But she was instantly hung up. Shall I cancel the connection? It must be because of the guards. Kafka nodded at the dark-haired man's idea. Yes, but that wasn't the goal, he said as he pressed another button, causing a hologram to activate, showing a map of the entire kingdom. The most important thing was 2 bright dots. One was red and pulsed every so often, and the other was green and remained steady. Blade looked at me with interest. Magic locator? Kafka, that's right. I'm feeling the magic of his cell phone and the gun on his wrist. It's clear he won't deactivate them. The magic of those objects is almost imperceptible to anyone. Blade nodded, his emo face all grimacing. Sure, we'll go find her now, right? Kafka nodded. Yeah, it shouldn't be a big problem. He's barely in a guard prison, not maximum security or the kingdom's dungeons, he said as he turned off the tracker. They had both already memorized the path to the prison where Silverwolf was supposed to be. Blade, Naruto, if he's not in the dungeons, he must not have done anything serious. Normally when someone is sent to surveillance jail, it's for some joke or market theft. He said, knowing this well. He was sent to surveillance jail a few times for his jokes with his old friends. Kafka, yes, and knowing her, it must be because of the first. Elsewhere, you could see a kind of stone prison where there were several rooms covered by bars, where in one of the many empty cells was Silverwolf with her original appearance handcuffed, while she was sitting on a small bed in the almost empty cell. The girl was angry. Just for unwittingly throwing a wrapper into the street, these idiots tried to trap her. She managed to bug one of them, but the other took her cell phone, and 2 holy knights of this kingdom captured her. If I weren't on this undercover mission, I would have hacked them to the point where non-humans would be able to call each other. Why is Kafka calling me? I asked, looking at the hologram that appeared on his face with the image of the purple-haired girl. Hearing a noise outside, I cut the hologram, causing the call to drop. At that moment, a guard appeared in her sight and went straight to the other cells, which were mostly empty except for her and 2 young men who appeared to be criminals. I'll enjoy killing them tomorrow, she thought as she blew a pink bubble of gum. How long will it take them to find me? They can't sense my magic tisk, she thought as she continued chewing her gum. This continued for a few minutes, and she grew tired. She tried using a lightning ability to break the cuffs, but it did nothing. Tisk, anti-magic cuffs, they're always annoying, she thought as she began to use her strength, and slowly but surely, the cuffs began to break. Strength wasn't her strong suit, but that doesn't mean she isn't strong. Although she was faster than she was strong, the strength was still there to be used. The handcuffs were about to snap, but at the same time they were destroyed. The large metal prison doors flew open. Interested by the noise, she approached the metal bars in her cell, and since she could now use magic, with a strong tug, the metal bars were neatly detached from the wall. Throwing the metal bars to one side, Silverwolf looked to the opposite side where a somewhat bizarre and very comical scene was taking place. On the floor was a knight being stepped on the head by a Naruto in his Naruto lioness form, while next to him was a smiling Kafka who had a guard on his knees who seemed to adore her, but who didn't seem to realize that his friend was about to die at Naruto's hands. Silverwolf. Didn't they take long? Asked the gray-haired girl with blue tips. Meanwhile, Kafka smiled with his typical face of deceptive kindness. Kafka crossed his arms while he thought about what the reality hacker had said, not noticing that his breasts were bouncing because of it. Silverwolf frowned at Kafka's unconscious display of his breasts to her. The girl just huffed in annoyance as she walked past the purple-haired woman, who didn't even flinch. Naruto landed the final stomp on the man's head, killing him by leaving fractures in his skull and clearly piercing his brain with a few coils of the skull. It's time to go. We can't stay here any longer, said the lioness, looking at Kafka, who nodded and looked at the guard. Kafka, stand up, he said politely, his eyes twinkling, and just as the guards did before, he stood up formally, and in a flash, a purple thread cut across his neck so neatly that the guard himself didn't even notice. Until slowly, the guard's head fell to the floor. There must be no witnesses, Naruto said, looking at Silverwolf, who nodded. With that, the magical artifact on his wrist modified slightly, causing a cannon to appear on the bottom of his wrist. Naruto, that'll alert everyone. We should lie low until tomorrow, he said, but the girl ignored him. Naruto just sighed, letting the girl finish. Aiming at the cell in the back where 2 young men were watching everything, without waiting or giving a warning, he fired a bolt of magical electricity that exploded at the end. The Nidaptas had information about our appearance, that makes them important, and that's why they're 50 points each. That's 100 points for me, he said smiling. Naruto shook his head and started to leave the dungeon. I killed a guard. Guards are more important than simple delinquent teenagers, even if they know of our appearance. So I have 200 points. Kafka smiled as he spoke. I killed one too. We're right on top of you, Sil, he said playfully. Silver Wolf just frowned. Hey! That's cheating. They don't count the guard I kill first, she said, annoyed as she grabbed her cell phone and magic communicator from the guard's table and followed her companions. Naruto, you didn't kill him, you just bugged him in reality, and that's easily undone. Absolute cancellation would be more than enough to undo it. Silver smiled at that. So? How about that? With that, the gray-haired girl snapped her fingers with a smile on her face. 300 points for me. I'm still in the lead, as always, she said proudly as she blew a bubble and walked ahead of her classmates. Elsewhere, Welt could be seen standing seriously in front of the apparent corpse, in a state of reality bug. This is new. I don't remember seeing anything like this before. Although it reminds me of something, I don't know why. He thought seriously. This reality bugging was something he'd seen before, worse, somewhere. Topz. Why do you call me Welt? She asked in a sharp, distant tone. The boy didn't mind his younger sister's tone and pointed at the corpse. The girl looked at the scene her brother had shown her in surprise. She'd seen this before. Of course, she'd seen it 3 years ago, during the Chaos Hunters' invasion of Camelot. This is it! Welt, a reality bug. Whoever made this controls reality, or at least can bug people into it, he said seriously. Although I've seen this before, I don't remember where or from whom. Would you know anything? The girl didn't hear the question because she was thinking. First, there was the presence of here. And now they're here. This must be a damn joke, she thought desperately. At first, she thought she had simply felt the magic of him here in case she regretted it, but the fact that they are here is no coincidence. Topz. The girl came to for the 3rd time that day. I don't recognize him, she said, crossing her arms sternly. If you don't recognize him, why would I? Welt sighed as he adjusted his glasses. Next to the boy with brown hair and a white streak was the one in red armor, silently watching the two brothers interact. I don't know why His Majesty chose them. They're dysfunctional and seem to only tolerate each other for their mother. They're not worth it. He thought seriously, looking at both of them with clear disgust. If you keep looking at me like that, I'll take out your red tin eyes, Topz said angrily, with a slight blue aura around her, looking at the man in red armor who frowned at that insult. Well, stop both of you, and you, he said, looking at the man in armor. You must be more careful with your actions, words, looks, and thoughts. Remember your rank in this hierarchy. Sure, Mr. Welt, he said politely. An angry Topz turned around to leave, but at that moment, the body, which had been in a state of bug, exploded, covering most of the people near it, including Welt and the armored man. The villagers were terrified, and the uproar began. Many screamed in terror, while others fainted from the carnage they witnessed. They made him explode, Welt thought in astonishment, blocking the blood flowing towards him because he was the closest. It's just like the Knights of Camelot. They exploded after being unbalanced by existence. Wait, she's here. The boy with glasses thought alertly. Topz was shocked. This confirmed everything. She exploded in the same way the people from the eternal kingdom of Camelot had exploded in front of her 3 years ago. As if her existence had become unbalanced, and reality was trying to fix it. No doubt it's her. Silver Wolf is in this realm, she thought. This is bad, she's here and we don't know her position. She could kill us all without us being able to do anything. And clearly the others must be here too. This is bad. She thought, deeply worried. Maybe this is her fault, not telling her brother about this just because she sensed his magic could cause them to destroy them and kill them all. Welt, Ironside, I want every knight in this kingdom to start searching, he said seriously. Our target is the Chaos Hunters. With Naruto. The trio of companions could be seen surrounded by 4 holy knights and more than 10 common knights. The 3 stood with their backs to each other, taking cover. I told you that attack would draw too much attention, Naruto said calmly. Silver Wolf, who cares? There are only 14 of them, we'll easily get rid of them. Kafka. It would be better to be more attentive to the enemies, don't you think? He asked in his kind tone. Naruto nodded respectfully and Silver Wolf nodded, snorting in annoyance at taking orders from someone other than his leader. Until something came to mind. Friends! I have an idea! Naruto and Kafka looked at her strangely. Whoever has the fewest points at the end will pay for the other's dinner. Kafka smiled kindly. I think it's a good idea. Although if I win, I want Naru to cook. What do you say, Naru? The silver-haired man smiled calmly. Of course, Miss Kafka, but if I win, I won't be cooking for a whole month. Both girls smiled, one defiantly and the other kindly. Silver Wolf, good. Let the battle begin. 10 minutes later. The entire dungeon could be seen destroyed, where Naruto, Kafka, and Silver Wolf were standing calmly. Wait for more. At least from the Holy Knights, he said calmly as he stood up from a pile of rubble created by Silver Wolf's lightning attack. Who cares? I lost after all, she said, arms crossed as she continued blowing bubbles with her new gum. She dropped the other one during the battle. Kafka was smiling even as she lost. Well, Naru will choose tonight's dinner, she said, amused, looking at Silver Wolf, who, although she seemed calm, was actually upset. It was her second loss in a challenge in her entire life, and it was hard to accept. The first was a random battle against Naruto, which she lost by 1 point. Now that was luck. Naruto began to think. I think we should get out of here before we choose, he said, whispering the words transformation backward. Noak Amroth snart. With that, Blade's appearance returned to the lionés, causing his eyes to return to those bright but dead sapphire reds. Kafka knew very well that those were his true eyes, his true self. Let's go. With that, the now adult black-haired boy walked towards the exit, followed by Kafka, who transformed into Makima, and Silver Wolf, who transformed into Stel. And it seemed like it was just in time, as at that precise moment, Ironside, Welt, and Topaz, along with more holy knights, entered the almost destroyed dungeon. It's them, Topaz said, looking at them and remembering those faces when they attacked Camelot. Welt, Kafka the Black Widow, Silver Wolf, the Hacker, and Blade. The living dead, he said, looking at 3 of the 4 known members of the Chaos Hunters. Their last member, March 7th, Demon of the Cold, wouldn't be around. Right? He asked, looking at the most wanted criminals in the world. Blade, Naruto Ironside the Black Knight, Topaz of the Blue Fire, and Wealth of Dark Magic. Who would have thought we'd find them here? Said the black-haired man with a bit of resentment when mentioning the 3, but more so when mentioning Welt and Topaz. Makima, Kafka, noticed this and placed her hand on his shoulder. Now that he doesn't stop, stupid. My revenge can't wait, and you know it. Blade, Naruto, clicked his tongue in annoyance. That voice in his head knew what it was. It was the same. Again, his hatred is making him have more than one personality in his mind. Stel, Silver Wolf, who would have thought it would be you? She said, looking at the girl with white hair and a red streak, whose name the silver-haired girl didn't know. Can you sleep better now? I mean, seeing so many people explode can't make for good dreams. The white-haired girl frowned. Everyone you killed came back to life. You can't kill within the eternal realm without His Majesty being able to reverse it. Stel, Silver Wolf, didn't seem to mind the answer and began chewing her gum again, making bubbles that popped once they reached a good size. Blade, Naruto, see you later, he said without interest as he began to walk alongside Makima, Kafka, and Stel, Silver Wolf. Welt stood in front of his path with a serious face. Nor will they go anywhere. They must be captured and brought before the King of Chaos, he said seriously. Blade, Naruto said nothing. But the voice again, his voice, told him they must take revenge right here. She deserves to be avenged, she died for her sins, and they must pay for it. Blade, Naruto, shut up, I'll get revenge my way. He thought seriously while without warning, Stel, Silver Wolf, began to write on her phone, causing Welt to attack her with a small black sphere that was heading at high speed, but the sphere was cut in 2 by a purple thread that was tied to Makima's, Kafka, central finger. Wouldn't it be better for everyone to leave? Please. The woman was cut off in the middle of her conversation by Ironside, who attacked her with his sword, but Makima, Kafka, easily dodged it. I won't let you control us like you did 3 years ago, he said seriously. Mikima, Kafka, stood there, not caring about his words. Drawing her hands behind her back, the woman was about to use her magic power at that moment. But a strong stomp from Blade, Naruto, made everyone look at him. "We'll only be retreating until very soon, so the best thing you can do is let us go," he said, and Welt just gave a small smile. The boy raised his hand, causing a type of staff to appear in his hand, and Naruto saw this seriously. Chaos artifact. In addition to its incredible power, it also has chaos tools. He thought seriously, looking at the staff he didn't recognize, or he'd never seen the boy use it. He must have taken it after the invasion 3 years ago. "Welt, don't get so confident, hunters. Your victory 3 years ago was just luck," he said seriously. Blade, Naruto, smiled. "You may be somewhat right, but this victory wasn't luck. It was strategy," he said. Instead, Silverwolf smiled as pressing the last button made everyone's legs buggy, in reality resulting in them being unable to move forward. Blade, Naruto, looked at this with doubt. "Why not the whole body?" he asked, looking at the feet of the Holy Knights and the followers of Chaos. "Still, Silverwolf, a cell phone, less than a minute, and I'm putting energy into suppressing my magic. You think I perform miracles? I couldn't do anything more than this with those limitations," she said calmly, blowing bubble gum again. Blade, Naruto, nodded in a cold and calm manner. "Sure, fine. We're leaving now," he said, looking the brown-haired boy in the eyes, and he did the same. "See you soon, and I'll get revenge," he whispered while making a magic seal. He began to speak. "Neukat Robsner Tellet," he said as the three of them disappeared in a blur of teleportation. Welt frowned in anger at how the greatest threats to Camelot had just escaped his grasp. At that very moment, his feet broke free from the reality bug, and he looked at the knights and spoke. "Find them!" Everyone, yes! They all shouted, disappearing. While Topz was in doubt. When using the teleportation magic, he felt the aura of his old friend again in the black-haired man. Could it be possible? No! The girl thought in her mind. As a blade it would be him, as a blade it would be Naruto. Chapter 4. Blade, Naruto, Mikima, Kafka, and Stell Silverwolf could be seen appearing in the middle of the crowd of people that formed after the body exploded a few minutes ago. It would be better to leave these forms. These forms have already lost their usefulness, Blade, Naruto said coldly. Both girls nodded calmly, and their transformations faded, revealing the trio of hunters in their original forms. "We'll leave the kingdom. It'll be best for the mission," Kafka said as he began to walk. Naruto and Silverwolf followed her closely, until Naruto looked into the distance where Welt was flying alongside Topz, looking all around. The silver-haired man tried to ignore them but at the same time keep an eye on them in case they were being followed. Although he didn't pass, he could see the two brothers separate. Welt headed toward the castle. "To see if we're close enough," he thought calmly. And Topz headed toward the exit the three were heading for. "How annoying!" "Naruto, go ahead. I'll be right behind you in a few minutes," he said, taking another path. Both Kafka and Silverwolf nodded indifferently as they continued on their way out of the kingdom, which, due to the night's crossing and in a hurry, would have entered shield mode tonight. "Kafka, we must hurry. In 10 minutes, no one will enter or leave this kingdom." Silverwolf nodded as she took out her magical artifact, a cell phone, and began playing a video game she'd created and configured herself. Although the device was meant to be a kind of insurance if she ever couldn't use her holographic hacking ability, it was normal for her. She began using her algorithm and reality abilities and created something she called video games. These consisted of moving images, 24 frames per second, giving them a fluid motion, and she controlled the character or object to use as she pleased and have fun. "Shouldn't we call it that?" she asked, without taking her eyes off her magic device. Kafka shook his head. "Nara knows what she's doing," he said, smiling calmly. Meanwhile, Naruto had been walking to a sparsely populated area. He hid in a dark alley and stopped suppressing his magic for a second, then instantly suppressed it again. In the distance, a Topz who was about to head to the entrance to announce that no one should enter or leave felt a slight, momentary surge of power, and as before, It was Naruto's magic being raised, but it vanished at the same moment. The girl frowned at the sight of the small bit of magic raised near her. It could have been a trap, but she didn't have much of a choice at the moment. It was either that or let him go with his team of criminals. So she turned around and headed to the place where she felt the magic and was surprised to see that the magic reappeared, but this time it remained, a sign that it was still there. Landing in the alley, he saw a gray-haired man with short hair covering his left eye, only revealing his bright green right eye. The clothing was noble, and what caught his attention most was the long collar of the shirt under the jacket. The girl was shocked. No, she was scared by the sight of the boy in front of her. A boy who had died in her eyes, a boy who had been pierced through the chest and thrown through a portal to any place in the world with no chance of living, stood in front of her, staring at her with a serious face, too serious. "Na Naruto. Why you are?" she said, stunned, unable to finish her words. She couldn't even cry with joy and happiness because of the shock she was in. Naruto looked at her emotionless, shocked face. "Helena," he said very curtly. The girl noticed the boy's threatening tone and unconsciously took a step back. "Naruto, you're alive? You're really alive?" she said in surprise. She couldn't believe it, she'd never thought this before. Having felt his magic more than twice today, she'd always thought it was a trick on her head, that guilt and regret were playing this trick on her, but she really never thought that her friend, no. That the person she'd liked for more than 8 years and whom she saw die 7 years ago was here, in front of her. Naruto looked at her astonishment, unconcerned. He didn't seem to care at all about her shock and amazement over the fact that he was alive. On the contrary, every time he said he was alive with a tone of happiness and shock, it only seemed to make him angrier, and he himself didn't know why. Maybe it's the part about being alive. He doesn't consider himself alive. After everything he's suffered, he doesn't feel alive. If he had that option, he would have died more than 6 years ago. Or the part about his happiness that he's alive. Whichever option he had, it angered him subconsciously. "Helena, I'll just ask you one question." The girl, still in astonishment, looked at him. "Naruto, I am really sorry." "I don't care. No apology from you three matters to me right now," he said curtly. The girl started to cry at that. "No," she said, crying, and Naruto frowned angrily at the girl. "You won't stop me from apologizing. I'm sorry, that's what will happen. I'm sorry that because of my brothers and I you almost died. I'm really sorry, and even if you don't accept my apology, I'm really sorry. Just answer my question, Helena," he said coldly and even angrier than before, but ignoring the apology for later. The girl was saddened by the hostile tone. "I'm Topz." Naruto was confused. The girl noticed this and decided to explain. "And now she called me Topz. I don't deserve to be called Helena. She was a loyal girl, and she loved you. I am just a traitor," she said, whispering the loved part, and apparently Naruto didn't hear it. Naruto listened to the girl's words in silence. She really seemed sorry, and although he couldn't say he would forgive her, he could simply exclude her from his van. Of course not." Naruto frowned. "Shut up, will you? I'm the one in control here. I decide what to do with my revenge," the silver-haired man thought angrily. Don't be stupid. She wants this, for you to feel sorry for her and not kill her. Asuna doesn't deserve this. She needs you to avenge her." His angry voice echoed in his head. I agree with him, you should calm down." Naruto was confused by the other voice. Anger? Was it his emotions talking to him? "Just shut up, I need to talk to her," he thought seriously this time. No voice spoke again. "Hele Topz." The girl nodded, saddened because the silver-haired man didn't say her name. "You can call me Helena. It'll be less complicated that way," she said, smiling with clear sadness. Naruto just ignored her sad face and continued speaking. "Helena, I just want to know one thing, then none of this happened." The girl lowered her head. It meant she'd let go of her apology, which only made her sadder. "Before that you had fun killing him?" she asked sadly. Naruto was confused. "You're having fun killing Cody, aren't you?" Naruto became confused again. I don't know what you're talking about, he replied coldly. Cody is my younger brother. He died alongside my mother 12 years ago. When they attacked the Eternal Kingdom of Camelot, Blade killed the Cody there. If you're Blade, that means it was you. Did you have fun? I asked again, looking straight ahead for the first time in the entire conversation. Naruto didn't say anything, but he didn't seem to care either. I didn't know that kid was Cody. I don't care either, and I honestly don't know who you're talking about. I killed a lot of kids under 6. If I killed him, it was because he possibly got in my way, he said, and although he tried to suppress it, Topz got really angry about it. Everyone who tried to get in the way died, not just your little brother. The girl exploded. She tried to hit him, but he just stepped aside. Kicking her in the back, the girl fell to the ground. Naruto, with a stern face, formed a sword out of a completely dark material with a purple glow around it, which he used to stab her into the side of her head with an obvious threat of death. Tears sprang to her eyes. He was only 4. And you killed him, she cried. Like Elizabeth in the first chapter of NNT. Naruto looked at her with his black eyes with a touch of purple, but nothing on his forehead as it should be for being a demon or part demon, something that, although it confused the girl, she did not think much about it because of her state of sadness and tears. Naruto, you said that both he and your mother had already died, right? Well, the Camelot people weren't real. Just illusions. I'm not going to carry guilt over something like that. The girl smiled sadly. You know, after you killed my little brother and your hacker friend blew up my mother, their bodies changed. They weren't themselves anymore. They were just dead fairies scattered on the ground. The girl started crying again. The king just had them eaten and then gave us others as if they were expendable. Even though her tears were still evident, her hatred and venom toward King Arthur was evident. Naruto, fairies. It was obvious I had to use someone else with an illusion, but you've known that all along, haven't you? I saw you saying that to Welt. The girl was shocked. You were there, she whispered in surprise, then her face turned melancholic. I always tried to fool myself that it was them, and when I started to think about it, I saw their bodies changing into 2 complete strangers and then being simply replaced as if nothing had happened. Since that day, I haven't been able to see them the way I used to. I can't even live next to them, she said tiredly. Naruto looked at her seriously. Making the layer of darkness from the demon clan disappear, his eyes returned to normal and his intimidating face changed to the calm one it had been before. Seeing this as a warning, the girl slowly stood up from the ground, and wiping her tears, looked at the silver-haired man. So that was your reason? He asked, looking into her eyes. The girl turned her blue eyes away from the lioness's green ones out of clear shame and regret. Trade me for your mother and brother? Topz nodded at the question. A week before I handed you over, a man in blue armor appeared at our house, offering us the chance to see our mother and brother again just to hand you over and verify. A prophecy. Welt and I were reluctant to accept because of the awkward timing, but Dan Hung agreed. Then Welt did. Naruto, and then you, he said coldly. But to his secret but profound surprise, the girl refused. I didn't accept. I never did. I just thought they'd regret it, and we'd turn back home. But Nina did it. Dan Hing convinced Welt to do it 100%, and unfortunately, either of them were going to back down. Naruto, and you didn't say anything. You let them take me to my death. You're worse than them. The girl smiled sadly. My mother died in front of me, my brother was born in the doctor's hands. Both Welt and Dan Hung were the only things I had left with her. I couldn't just tell some guard that you were thinking of handing me over. What do you think they'd think? I'd kill them instantly, she said, grabbing her forearm in shame. It was some kind of way to divert attention from the silver-haired man's green eyes. Naruto didn't respond because it was so obvious. If 2 boys were ever caught trying to hand over the prince of a kingdom like Lioness, they would be executed without shame. After all, it was the law. Approaching the girl, he crossed to her side, ending up back to back between them, and asked his final question. What happened to her? Topz was confused. You were there, you should have seen it. Naruto frowned, not wanting to share that information with her. Whether she regretted it or not, she was his enemy now. He sighed. I don't remember the ending. What happened to her? Topz, she whispered. Silence. Silence. Naruto opened his eyes in surprise. Clenching his fist, he was angry at what he heard from the girl. Trying to calm down without any success, he nodded as he began to walk away from Topz, who turned around to watch him leave. If you want, you can tell Welt about me. And tell him that Blade, the one who died of revenge, really is Naruto the Vengeful One. He said as he turned his head slightly and his eyes once again shone in the black with purple touches from before, and just like before, nothing appeared on his forehead. Topz, Naruto, I'm sorry. The silver-haired man quietly retreated, ignoring the girl's apology again, while Topz watched the boy she liked retreat. Did he really do the right thing? Letting his brothers do that to the boy. He knew it wasn't the right thing to do, but it was either that or losing his brothers. And that wasn't something he wanted, or at least he didn't want at the time. Chapter 5. We found ourselves in Lionés. It was daytime, and a group of 5 children could be seen walking through the kingdom of Lionés. One was a year-old Snow Naruto, whose hair was the same as his father's and his eyes were still heterochromatic. In his left ear was a circular blue earring, while inside it appeared to be a symbol of a moon with stars. Next to Naruto was a girl with very long brown hair reaching down to her sword, and a beautiful red flower adorned her head. Her outfit consisted of a dress that was white on top with long sleeves and red with gold accents on the bottom. Around her neck was a red ribbon with gold accents, and on her feet were long white skirts that reached down to her knees. Next to this girl was a white-haired woman with a red streak, and all the rest of her hair was red, and her eyes were a purple-blue hue. Her clothing was very common, a white shirt with red details and long sleeves. She also wore short black pants and long boots. He was a boy with brown hair and a streak of white along with glasses that made him look very intelligent. His outfit was also a shirt, except his was brown and gray with long black pants. The last one was a boy with black hair and green eyes. His outfit was also a shirt, but like the other boy, it was a different color, the chair being green. The boy wore a white shirt with green and gold details. On his right shoulder, he had a gold shoulder pad, and in that same ear, an earring. These last 4 kids were siblings. Their names were Asuna, Helena, Welf, and Dan Hang. The kids who were leading the way were leading Naruto to a surprise that the silver-haired boy didn't know what it was. His friends seemed very serious, too serious, he'd say. But he still followed them to see what it was all about. As they exited the kingdom's back entrance, Naruto became even more confused as they passed the secret hideout they had in a group. Guys! We've already passed the hideout, he said, and Dan Hang turned to look at him. That's not where we're going. Naruto was confused by what the dark-haired, green-eyed boy had said until he had to jump to avoid falling into a ravine on the ground. With that, the 4 boys stopped, ending up deep in the forest. Hey Suna-chan, do you know what we're doing here? The girl shook her head sincerely. Hang and Welf told me to just follow them and Helena. I don't know what they're planning, she said, while Naruto nodded and the 3 other boys stepped forward. Do you think this is another joke? Naruto shrugged. I don't know, I just hope it's the kingdom's fault. Mom will punish me if we do it this time, he said, thinking about his mom's face when she's upset. Asuna, hey Naru. Should we tell him about us? Naruto looked at her confused. But they already know about us. You're his sister and I'm his friend, he said innocently, and Asuna's sweat dropped at the young man's idiocy. I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about the other. The silver-haired man remembered the other thing. You're talking about that. After seeing where we're going, I find where we're going very interesting, he said, and the girl smiled at him. Hey, Suna-chan, do you think we're going to hunt a beast like before? He asked doubtfully. Maybe, I just hope a dragon doesn't appear this time. It was really hard to escape the other time, he said, and Naruto smiled proudly. Don't worry, my dad gave me another pie, and it probably has poison like the other one. So we're safe. Asuna's sweat dropped at that. Naru, it's clear that pie wasn't poisoned. The king just doesn't know how to cook, she said, and Naruto dismissed her with a smile. The girl just smiled at the innocence of her friend. Don't be silly. Dad obviously knew that was coming. Besides, Dad is the strongest and best knight in the world. He has the power to take out anyone in one move. He's totally invincible. So I doubt he doesn't know how to cook, she said admiringly, finally smiling. Asuna smiled. You really admire the king? You're so sweet, Naru, she said, smiling. Seeing that no one was there, she gave the boy a small kiss on the cheek. He blushed but smiled kindly. Naruto, Asuna. Come here. Both boys were excited to be called at a time like this, but seeing that no one was around, both boys nodded to the call as they went down a small steep hill. When they reached his friends, Naruto opened his eyes in surprise when he saw something surprising. That's a portal, he shouted in surprise. Welf nodded curtly. Yes, now. Asuna, come on, we'll cross first, and then you can go in, Naruto. Naruto nodded excitedly. It would be his first portal to cross in his short 9 years of age, or that would be until he remembered the years he was 4 or 5. Stopping to think about it, he saw that all his friends had already crossed, and he continued happily. Upon crossing to the other side, Naruto found himself in a completely strange place. The boy was surprisingly upside down on what looked like a floating rock. The most astonishing thing was that he didn't fall off. It was as if he were standing normally, not upside down. Naruto, wow! This is amazing, guys. Guys? Naruto looked around and was confused because he couldn't see his friends. Until he saw Dan Heng's voice. Without hesitation, he headed toward his friend's voice, and when he arrived, he became confused. He saw all his friends wearing a strange armor, nothing like the armor of lionés. It was a deep wine red and had a very strange shape. In the center of his chest was a symbol that appeared to be clouds or a strong wind blowing. At his waist was a sheathed sword of considerable size. Thank you for doing your duty, apprentices of Chaos. With this, you are now welcome to the eternal kingdom of Camelot. Those words surprised Naruto. Camelot? Like the Camelot that disappeared a year ago and is said to be attacking all non-human races. This is bad, why did they bring me here? He thought worriedly. If you're wondering why they brought you here, it's simple. Your life changed from living in an eternal realm with everything you want and crave. Naruto heard the voice of the red-armored man on his back and panicked. Moving away, he did a backflip, landing in a fighting stance. You want to fight me? Do you really think you can beat me? Naruto smiled. That's something to find out, he said seriously, while something else was on his mind. They traded me my life to live here? No! That can't be possible. They wouldn't do something like that, right? He asked himself mentally. At that moment, he was about to run away, which was his most viable option. But another armored person quickly landed on his back and kicked him hard, sending him flying toward the red-armored man named Ironside. Ironside caught Naruto in his hands. Are you sure it's that brother-in-law? Asked the other armored man. I don't want to hurt someone unnecessarily, he said while Naruto, still in pain, looked at his figure, which was a man with a light blue armor. His armor had 4 holes in the helmet and a sword on the left side of his armor. This was Morlad. Ironside, the professor says that the Knight of Pestilence is someone who possesses both light and darkness. And that can only come from a Nephilim naturally, so this must be it, or there's a chance it could be it, he said, squeezing the blonde's neck in pain. Morlad nodded at his brother-in-law's words. The chance it's not him is 50%, but it's just as likely that it is him. So we must take this chance. It may be the only one we'll ever get, he said, kicking Naruto away. Naruto fell in pain from the strong kick. Naruto fell at the feet of his friends who watched this a little terrified. Hang, this wasn't part of the deal. You said that before doing anything to him, you have to check if he's the real one, Helena said to her older sister, who didn't seem to take this into account. Hang ignored him without giving it any importance. That doesn't matter, we can be with Mom here. Something like this doesn't matter anymore, he said, moving away from the pained Naruto. Asuna and Helena looked at him with doubt, if they wanted to be with their mother. It had been more than 5 years since they saw their mother, but they didn't want to leave their friend either. "More lad, turn around and don't look back. It's the best way," he said, placing his hands on the shoulders of the boys who did as he was told. Meanwhile, Ironside kicked Naruto in the chest again, causing a crack to appear in the ground from the strong blow. The boys covered their ears as they walked. They really didn't want this, but it was too much, especially for the girls who had never thought of doing something like this. Helena was terrified because she practically participated in this, even though she didn't accept the deal. With remorse, she tried to run to help the boy, who could no longer scream at every Ironside stomp on his throat. But she was stopped by Morlad, who grabbed the back of her clothes. Seeing that she had the opportunity, Asuna took the opportunity to run away and go after the blonde. While Welt just followed the path next to Dan Hang without looking back, Helena moved as much as she could to try to help the boy. But Morlad was far superior in strength, and easily subdued her. "Leave me alone, idiot! Leave him alone, child! It's necessary to preserve those we love here, even your mother," the girl cried as she shook her head. She wanted to see her mother again. She missed him so much, but she never thought they would kill the boy. Her childish mind gave her another idea. They would simply avert that prophecy by sealing the boy's power, or preventing him from becoming strong. She never thought they would kill him, much less torture him like that. As Helena tried to get away from the Chaos Knight, Asuna, using a basic magic she learned a while ago, created a small sphere of water which she used to hit Ironside's helmet, causing water to enter through the helmet, temporarily clouding his vision. "Naruto! Naruto, are you okay?" Naruto opened his blurry green eye. The boy smiled when he saw his friend. "Suna-chan," he whispered in pain. "Sena-chan, you shine like a sun. You look beautiful," he said, smiling, blood coming out of his mouth. The girl ignored the compliment because of the bad timing of the silver-haired man's words. "Stop talking nonsense! You're hurt, we need to heal you," she said worriedly. "Damn! I should have learned healing magic before that stupid water spell," she thought, annoyed. The blonde's bright eyes slowly faded, to the deep concern of Asuna and Helena in the distance. "Naruto, wake up! Don't close your eyes! Naruto! Naruto, death is so cold, is Asuna crying? It must be because of me," I thought. More than sad or scared, with doubt and ignorance of its event. Really, death was something that could only be written by someone who felt it. If I weren't feeling it right now, I wouldn't be able to understand it even a little. Tears streamed down the worried brown-haired girl's eyes, falling onto the cold face of the boy whose dull eyes almost indicated his impending death. "Are you thinking you'll die so soon? I didn't choose you as a vessel for this." "Naruto, thoughts, I'm already hallucinating, hee. Death is really strange," I thought, and the voice was heard again. The Cianore mortals try to justify the unknown with dementia or madness. They really are fools. Naruto was offended by that, but since he was dying, the only thing that came out of his face covered by his blood was a smile showing his bleeding mouth. I'll give you a bonus, but it will only be this once. I can't help you forever, so you will depend on me like he does, and that is precisely what I don't want. Naruto was confused. But at that moment, his mind exploded, in a clearly figurative way. He felt as if something had changed inside his head, not his body, not his magic. His mind, it was as if he was seeing things and feeling things he'd never be able to feel. He was understanding things he never understood before, magic he thought he'd never decipher, and seeing something impossible for mortal eyes to see. Raising his left hand, a pink glow appeared, causing the blood on top of him to quickly dry, and his internal wounds to slowly but surely begin to heal. Asuna smiled in joy at seeing the boy gradually become healthier. And in the distance, Helena calmed down, stopping moving in Morlad's arms out of concern for her friend and love interest. That was relieving, she thought, sighing in joy as the tears running down her cheeks stopped. Ironside took off his helmet, letting the water that blocked his view fall. Without waiting, he quickly put the helmet back on. Turning angrily to the girl, he saw that Naruto was already with her, and at that moment a stop greeted him in the back from the younger silver-haired man who was already fully healed, and with his eyes with a strange shape. Strangely, both pupils were now blue but with a lighter tone and with a lotus flower shape inside. The flower was white with a great brightness inside, being a very pure brightness. You could say that it was the purest light ever seen. What is that power? It's not from the goddess clan, but it's not from the demon clan either. Is it her magic power? He thought with doubt. No. He denied in his mind. It must be something else. He thought, taking out his sword. Sending a slash at the boy, he was surprised to see that the boy was still next to where his sword fell. He dodged me? How is that possible? He thought as Naruto's eyes looked at him, and the man was surprised by the design of the eyes. That shape? What are those eyes? Naruto was even more surprised than the knight. I see it. I see more than before, he thought while putting his hand to his face in surprise. I see her movements through her soul. This is incredible. I also understand Mom's healing magic, the fighting movements of the training knights. I can even understand their movements and do them. He thought, smiling. He never thought of doing this. His mind was telling him thousands of things he could do at that moment, great strategies, perfect moves, ways to attack. Even when he never trained, now he seemed to be able to do everything he saw someone do in the past and perfect the little he learned. Ironside looked at the boy. It's time to die, he said as he addressed the boy, but suddenly a kick hit him in the chest, causing him to step back. Naruto took advantage of this and jumped up and tried to run away, but at that moment a loud bang hit him as something fell in front of him. The smoke slowly cleared as a brown strand of smoke appeared in Naruto and Ironside's sight, causing the latter to be surprised by the presence of this person he knew perfectly well. Wow, Ironside, are you having trouble with a kid? I didn't expect that from you, said a voice that sounded like a child to Naruto, until the last part when the voice became thicker and a figure fell from the smoke. It was a man with light brown hair, purple eyes, and black scara. He wore white clothing with golden designs and a blue line on his chest, and over it a cape that blocked the view of his right arm. This was Arthur Pendragon, the king of Camelot and the bearer of the creator entity of the Demon King and the supreme deity, Chaos. Naruto was surprised to see what had happened to Arthur. They didn't know why, but something in both of them called to each other. Something was attracting them, and neither of them knew what it was, but at the same time, they had an involuntary suspicion of what it was. Interesting, King Arthur said, looking at Naruto. So this is the possible Pestilence Knight? It's very interesting, he said, and Naruto unconsciously got into fighting form. He had never used this before. He only understood it through his better mind, having seen knights in training do it before. I don't know how I'm doing this. I move, think, and even act in a way I never did. I was able to use breast healing magic, and it seems like more things I saw before. He thought to look at Asuna, who was now being grabbed by Morlad along with Helena to prevent her from coming to her aid, while meanwhile Welt and Dan Heng just looked serious. In an instant, Arthur tried to attack Naruto, who without knowing how moved and placed himself next to the king, who looked at him with a smile that without knowing why, Naruto did not like. Sending a strong blow, Arthur stopped and was surprised to feel a sharp pain in his chest that caused blood to come out of his nose, causing great surprise in the king of Camelot. Arthur, I was forcing my soul, he thought, surprised. She already knows how to extract souls like the demon clan at such a young age? No, he denied his thoughts. It wasn't as if he was forcing her out like demons normally do, but rather he was destroying her from within her body. This wasn't something any demon knew how to do, and a child almost did it to her. If he didn't have the chaos, I could say his soul would be ashes. Not bad, kid. You're really interesting, but sadly you won't get any further than this. It would be interesting if you joined me, he said, wiping the blood from his nose. No way, he replied, his only thought being to flee, but also confused by the king's sudden bleeding. Bleeding? But how? I never did anything, right? He thought, but he moved again without realizing it, this time dodging a stab from Ironside. Arthur smiled cruelly at how interesting the boy was. Not even the young man himself knew how, but he moved without seeing the young man. Arthur, he reads our movements through those eyes. It's clear that he does it by anticipating our attacks by seeing them before. But how? I thought with doubt. While I thought, he was going to destroy my soul, maybe that's the key. The soul, he said, and tried his luck, summoning a creature with a head similar to a whale and spider legs. The thing seemed to be a demonic creature, but without conscience. The boy didn't know what it was, but since it happened in an instant, he couldn't think much longer, as the tentacles cruelly began to pierce his chest. From a distance, Asuna watched, terrified by the King of Camelot's utterly ruthless actions. Helena was in shock at what had happened to the silver-haired boy. She began to cry again. She was stupid to do so, but at the same time, it was the only thing she could do. She couldn't go in to fight him, or help him. Helena, why? Because I didn't tell you about this. At least Naruto wouldn't be like this. This is my fault. Naruto opened his eyes in surprise. I didn't dodge it like before. But how? He thought, surprised. The creature had no silhouette. It didn't seem to have a soul or a life of its own. It was just a simple doll. Pain surged through his chest. As tears streamed down his cheek, he was a child and didn't want to die. Mom, he thought, crying for not being able to see his mom, dad, or older brother again. I don't want to die here. Please, Dad, help me. Dad! You will not die. Naruto opened his eyes slightly, unaware of what I was talking to. He made contact with you, and that will give you the power to survive this and thousands of other fights. So stay alive and fight my other candidate to be my chosen one. Fight to be the true chosen one of Chaos. With that scream, Naruto woke up. What? Was it just a nightmare? He thought, looking at his side where Silverwolf was sleeping peacefully. No, he denied, surprised and stressed. Sweat covered his body and his white shirt was soaked in it. So that happened after that Ironside guy stepped on my chest? Helena and Asuna tried to help me. He thought, surprised. Naruto, she really was telling the truth. He thought, looking at the ceiling. Something that caught his attention was how she fought, also what he saw. When someone even thought about attacking, a silhouette would already come attacking and he would dodge it. It was the way he was able to dodge all those attacks. He wondered, more interested in what happened that day. And above all, whose voice was that? He thought as he unconsciously placed his hand on his face, leaving his fingers open so he could see where his green eye had changed to blue and revealed the flower symbol, but it instantly returned to its normal form. Seeing that none of his questions were answered, he decided to go back to sleep. It's barely 5 a.m.? I still have time to get started, he thought, lying down, all without noticing Kafka's purple eyes staring at him from the corner of the door. Giving a kind but deceptive smile, Kafka closed the door behind him, leaving the two young people to sleep inside the room. Have a good sleep, Naru. Remember the little angels, she said, amused, as she headed to her next door. Chapter 6. Naruto, Kafka, and Silverwolf could be seen atop a large building within the kingdom. This watchtower was barely smaller than the castle, and they had taken it over a few minutes ago, killing all the guards guarding it. It was, without a doubt, the best place for them to begin their attack on the kingdom, which, it seemed, was already beginning to mobilize for its attack on lionés. Shall we begin? Silverwolf asked, sitting in a holographic chair, while in front of her were many holograms in the form of screens and keyboards ready to be used. She even had keyboards and screens on her right and left sides, demonstrating her mastery with them by using 3 at once with no apparent difficulty. Naruto, who was sitting on the shore, was thinking. Yesterday was the day he discovered the most about what happened after she fainted. For him, it might have been because of Topaz. Telling him part of it must have triggered something in his brain to remember the rest. But there's also a chance it was something or someone else. That voice, why does it seem so familiar? He thought out of his mind. That voice that spoke to him here that day really seemed familiar, even if he never heard it. It seemed connected to him in an unconscious and spiritual way. I really need to know what else happened that day, something more in depth. The silver-plated man thought, looking at the castle in the distance where his targets were, where 2 people who would be his freedom were. Kafka looked at the white-haired man. He knew about the boy's past and his betrayals and losses, but as hunters and assassins of chaos, they couldn't let that interfere with their mission. That would lead to important deaths within lionés for the future they needed, the future they were creating. Naru. It's time. You can go there after you're done here, the woman said to the boy, who nodded. Standing on the edge of the tower, the lioness walked over to Silverwolf, who was ready to begin. Stretching her fingers, the girl smiled, eager to use the most fun part of her ability. Topz still maintains her sensory barrier. Any spike of magic you use here will be sensed by her instantly, as will anyone who doesn't suppress their magic. Naruto looked into the distance of the castle again. The only way for you to use your ability and not have her sense you is to remove this barrier over the kingdom. Kafka, but whoever deactivates it with any magic will be felt the same way, which means we need a sacrifice, she said, and both young men looked at her, nodding. With that, Kafka's purple threads appeared on his fingers, and a soldier began to climb the tower's stairs. Kafka smiled as the dead body under his control leaped from the gigantic building. Naruto looked at this and began to speak. Ratolf, he said, and the dead man began to float. He flew under his control to the center of the kingdom, where he was still under Kafka's control. The soldier raised his hands in a dead form, as if he were a puppet. Kafka, flame of sacrifice. A burst of fire shot out from the dead soldier's hands and was fired towards the barrier, resulting in it colliding with the barrier, which dissolved with the mere touch of the technique. Both Silverwolf and Naruto looked at the woman strangely. Did you know she used the fire element? The hacker asked with interest as the bubble in her mouth popped. Something very common for her. Kafka, I didn't know. No matter the element, it would be a blaze, and it was a sacrifice for the mission. The name would make sense anyway, he said, smiling while Naruto nodded coldly and Silverwolf shrugged. The girl smiled. Okay, time to hack, he said as he began tapping on the holographic keys, causing billions of numbers to appear, which were zeros and ones, since they're the only numbers used in things like that. The girl smiled as the numbers flashed across her forehead until she reached the score of her algorithm. -333. That'll do, Naruto said, looking at the score. The girl gave him her middle finger while smiling. It was a good score, and he was clearly good. Kafka good. Launch the technique. It's time. Silver smiled as he pressed a button. A magical explosion covered much of the kingdom, and when it cleared, a barrier could be seen covering 3/4 of the entire kingdom, leaving one part free, theirs. Kafka, remember. When we get in there, we'll be as human as they are, he said as a magenta-purple sword began to appear in his belt on his left side and a design on the hilt. And in each hand he held a metal object with a shape apparently made for shooting. One was white and the other black to represent yin and yang apparently. Naruto nodded at the woman's warning, and with that the ground began to crack. Or so it seemed, since crimson flowers of a blood color truly emerged from the ground, and from there a fragmented sword of a golden color slowly emerged until half of the fragmented blade and the black handle were revealed. In this way Naruto Lioness took the sword, pulling it out with a jerk that left a crimson cut in space itself, seeming like it would open the sky with that single movement. Let's begin, he said, placing his foot on the edge of the building, and Kafka stood beside him, creating an imposing appearance. Elsewhere, Topz could be seen gathered in the king's chamber, along with Welt and Ironside. Ironside sat on his throne, looking scolded. The fact that he wanted to leave the castle but was forbidden by Chaos's subordinates due to the danger he was in. These bastards, he thought, annoyed. Topz listened to the calm meeting. She was still thinking about yesterday, what the silver-haired man had said about his almost complete lack of knowledge of what happened the day he was almost murdered and the day he was betrayed. Should I tell the truth? If I do everything, Camelot will be after him for doing it 3 years ago. That would only betray him even more than I already have, she thought doubtfully. Making up her mind, she remained silent. His thoughts stopped when he felt a spike of magic being launched from the center of the kingdom, and an instant later, the barrier around the entire kingdom deactivated. Welt. Someone like my barrier. Welt nodded seriously. That must be them. Send half the troops over there, the rest should stay here in case of an attack, he said seriously, and Ironside nodded. Ironside left the king's chamber to distribute the troops. Welt looked at Topaz seriously. Did you sense his magic? Topaz shook his head. The magic was very low, and its essence wasn't compatible with the person who cast the technique. It wasn't from either of them, he said seriously, and Welt nodded, thinking a little about what he had said. Kafka. He sighed, thinking that it must clearly be that. They clearly must have used a pawn. The problem is knowing where they are. They can be anywhere and do whatever they want. The man with brown hair and a white streak cut his head when at that moment a guy with a passive feeling entered the environment. Silver Wolf. Damn, she activated her ability, he said, annoyed. This passive ability of the hacker Silver Wolf was very dangerous. It controlled the cores and magic circles inside people, causing an imbalance in the spiritual and physical part of magic, making them literally explode from within. Few are lucky enough to stabilize their magic. Although there are possibilities to do it, the only way was to have perfect control so that the technique explodes outside the user. But if his control of magic was not perfect, the magic core would explode, killing the person from the inside out, and, depending on the amount of magic, the others around him. Topaz, I'll take care of her, he said seriously. The way his mother died for this girl didn't please him. Even if it was an illusion, she still looked like his mother, and that made him harbor an unconscious hatred for the hacker girl. Welt nodded. Sure. Just remember to start using magic outside of its range, otherwise you'll die, he said, and the girl nodded and stopped as she passed him. Welt, I tried to say something, but the boy cut me off. Leave it for later. We have to take care of them first, he said seriously as he fixed his glasses and started walking toward the hallway. Topaz nodded with a bad feeling. Get out alive, he thought as he began to walk toward the king, who was startled by the girl's staring. Step aside, he said earnestly, and the king nodded, frightened. As the girl moved, she looked at the throne. With her brute force, she grabbed the throne and threw it against the wall, causing the king to panic at the sound of the elegant chair falling to the floor. No longer holding the throne, he could see a secret passageway. Throwing herself into the secret passage, the girl was covered in darkness. The king looked down the passageway, where the darkness obscured his view. She's finally gone, he said happily. Guards! Bring my throne! With that, 2 guards entered and took the throne, placing it back in its original position, allowing the king to sit happily. Elsewhere, Naruto Kafka could be seen slowly descending the tower. They had more than 20 minutes to begin their entire plan. That was more than enough time for them to be ready and in their strategic positions. Remember, you're captured, and I'm going after the target, Kafka said, smiling. Naruto nodded calmly. Upon reaching the 50th floor, Naruto looked out the tower window where a large number of holy knights and a number of normal knights were coming towards his position, covering the tower within minutes. This should only happen in 20 minutes, Kafka said, looking alongside the silver-haired man. Naruto was confused by the fact that this was happening now, given that the estimated time frame was only 20 minutes away. After a moment of reflection, Naruto spoke. Kingdoms often have secret passages. Topaz must have used one and activated his barrier. With it active and us not suppressing our magic, it's clear he'll sense us, he said calmly. Kafka pretended to understand. Of course. The secret passages. They're things so ancient that not even the kings of this generation know where they are. But being the girl, it was clear she would investigate the castle from head to toe if she had any questions. Naruto said nothing and looked at the soldiers outside. The plan continues. Kafka looked at him strangely with his smile. The silver-haired man punched the window pane, causing blood to flow from his hand, but ignoring it, the boy stuck his head out. I'll let myself be captured, and you'll go after our main target. Kafka nodded with his enigmatic smile, and continued down. Naruto looked at the end of the tower and, with a sigh, let himself fall freely and calmly with his eyes closed. It'll hurt more if they pierce your chest. His thoughts stopped when he hit the ground hard, causing all the knights to jump at the sight of his body on the floor. He fell from up there, said a common knight, frightened by this. Someone falling from such a height was a clear sign of death. No, he's not dead, But he's nothing like Blade's appearance from the Chaos Hunters. He could be someone else, or a puppet like Mr. Ironside said. No. He's Blade, or his true appearance. Blade is just a disguise, Topz said, appearing among the crowd of knights. Naruto. Just stop this. You'll only hurt innocent people, he said, standing in front of the silver-haired man, who was chained by his hands and feet. The chained Naruto looked at the girl emotionlessly. Are you telling me I wasn't innocent before and that's why you betray me, or are you asking me not to do something you did to me? He asked with apparent curiosity, which made the girl look away. The girl closed her eyes in sadness. Is that why you're doing this, your attack on Camelot, your attack here? Is it all for revenge? The silver-haired man, who was forced to get up from the ground, shook his head. My revenge is on you three. Those who die afterward are for intervening, he said, walking calmly with the guards around him. Topz seemed a little wary of that. Although Camelot isn't far from this, he thought seriously. Naruto looked at her doubtfully as she turned to the squad captain and gave him some apparent orders that only drew a small, silent smile from the boy, which no one noticed. Squad! We're heading to the dungeons. Naruto visibly frowned at that, and Topz mentally nodded. That face said the Chaos Hunters were planning to do the same thing they did in Camelot. Blade / Naruto would surrender and head for the king, Silverwolf would block all magic, and Kafka would attack the bases to weaken the king's support. Some time later, Naruto could be seen in a dungeon with chains on his feet limiting his movement, or approach to the bars and handcuffs on his hands that took away his magic or the ability to use it. Meanwhile, Topz stood in front of him as his main guard, watching over him. Topz looked at him seriously, even though she was still remorseful. She wanted to maintain her ideal that protecting her siblings was the best thing for her family. Stop doubting yourself. Topz became confused and looked at the imprisoned lionés. Stop doubting what you want. Let me go, give myself up, seek forgiveness, or walk away from it all and move on with your life. It's annoying to read your face so easily, at least it's a bit of a challenge, he said disinterestedly. Topz frowned. If you know I'm like this, why don't you? Naruto interrupted her. Just because you don't have your ideal doesn't mean I don't have mine. I know what I want, my revenge on Camelot and you three. Hey. No, Camelot wasn't included. There are innocent people in that place, she said angrily at the boy. Naruto seemed to think. It doesn't matter. Let's just say I dreamed about what happened that day. And I can tell you that Camelot is as guilty as its king. Praising a king who is committing genocide against races other than humans? It's clear they're just as guilty, you're the best example. Just because they don't set an example doesn't mean they're not to blame for what's happening. Topz was angry, but upon hearing the example, she simply became embarrassed. Stop talking, you two. You'll catch up before you die, Naruto. Welcome, he said, looking at the brown-haired man with the white streak. The boy adjusting his glasses looked at him seriously. Who would have thought that defenseless boy would turn out to be Blade, the living dead? Life really does surprise you, doesn't it, Naruto? The chained boy smiled. I can say the same. The one I wanted as a brother is the same one whose head I'll behead. It's truly amazing. Whelp frowned. You're at our mercy, Naruto. His plan went down the drain by bringing you here instead of the castle. Do you really think we're stupid enough to suffer the same plan twice? Naruto thought for a moment, earning Welt a frown and a drop of Topz. It reminded him of when Naruto used to do that as a kid to irritate his siblings. No, he replied. But you'd be so stupid as to leave the real target alone and come see me. Welt was surprised. Approaching the grates, he looked at the boy sternly. You're not fooling us. We know how this movement goes between you three. Silverwolf hacks and leaves us without magic. Kafka attacks the bases, and you go with the king. You think so? Well, we'll change it up a bit. I'm captured and brought here so you both can come here, and Kafka goes after the king. By now, he's probably in the castle, killing everyone, he said, smiling. And I'll kill you. With that, Naruto broke the chains with pure physical strength and then kicked the grates that flew towards the brothers, Welt being the closest and the one who was hit hard with the metal bars. Chapter 7. Walking slowly, Naruto broke the chains on his feet and headed for a reforming Welt. A kick to the chin launched him into the air, and another kick launched him into the far wall. Naruto made his sword appear again, opening the ground with the health flowers reaching the surface. Welt, who was slowly getting up, looked at the health flowers with doubt. Health flowers? They're exactly the same ones Blade left behind when he massacred the guards. So it's him, he thought, stopping. Summoning his staff, he drew the lower half, revealing his Chaos Blade. Reclining blade and staff of darkness. 2 weapons in one. It must have been a real pain for King Arthur to fuse the 2 weapons just for you. Are you that spoiled? Or have you slaughtered so many races for the one who already trusts you? Welt stared at the hunter. I'll do whatever it takes to keep my brother and mother safe. No matter what. Naruto nodded. Sure. So much for protecting an illusion, who would have thought? He said, making a seal and a pink cube of a reasonable size inside, where only the 2 of them were since Topz coincidentally ended up outside the range of the magic. Otsfrep OBC, he said seriously, and Welt looked at him. It's not an illusion. It's them. She acts the same way, he said, and Naruto nodded. Naruto, yes. You're so convinced you slapped your own sister for it. Now that's conviction, that must be why Arthur has you in such a position. Welt frowned angrily and prepared for battle. It's my family's problem, stay out of it, Blade. Naruto gave a smile that clearly showed madness in his eyes. Oh? You're already saying my nickname with such conviction, have you confirmed it yet? Was it so hard for you to believe your sister's words that it was me? Listo asked as he looked at the boy face to face with sword in hand. This surprised Welt, who visibly lost his composure, to the lioness's confusion. What are you talking about? Topz has never told me anything about you. Why would she know? Naruto smiled inwardly. A good time to get revenge on the man in front of him. You didn't know? He asked innocently. I thought he trusted you. I visited Topz yesterday, revealed my identity, and thought he'd tell you. But it seems that wasn't the case. Welt glared at him, not believing him. Looking at her sister outside the cube, the girl looked away, confirming what Naruto had said. It must really hurt that your sister doesn't trust you that much. I don't think she gives out information. That's what it was called, huh? What was it? Oh yeah, betrayal, she said, smiling at the end. Welt frowned angrily as he lunged at Naruto, who blocked his sword strike with his own. Naruto smiled cruelly as his sword exploded in a burst of dark flames, catching the other boy off guard by the risky attack. Both of them were sent flying to either side of the cube. Landing on his feet, Naruto looked at Welt, who landed safely and whose sword was intact, which surprised him a little. Chaos weapons are strong, he thought as Welt pointed the staff at him, causing a large sphere with an attractive force to begin attracting him and everything nearby. The silver-haired man watched with interest as even the ground and debris were drawn in. Is this your magical power? Creating spheres of attraction? Welt smiled. You think so? Well, you haven't proven anything, he said as the sphere began to grow, and Naruto, surprised, saw how the sphere's pull increased. Black hole. Naruto widened his eyes at the name of the technique. That's my magical power. I can create spheres with the force of attraction and gravity comparable to their size and weight. The more it weighs, the more it will attract and crush, to the point where its force of attraction is infinite in the center, making the target unable to move. And infinite gravity will crush everything to atoms, and even crush them until they cease to exist, making nothing of it remain. Even someone with a healing like yours would die. Naruto frowned as he summoned a pair of dark wings and his eyes took on a dark hue, yet the demon clan mark didn't appear on his forehead, which confused Welt. He still can't use the demon clan's power freely? That will give me an advantage. Naruto looked at the sphere that was still attracting him towards it, and at this rate, it would be pulled in a few minutes. Is there no limit to how much mass you put on this thing? He thought while trying to get something to come to his mind. The center that lassoed was what started it all. It must also be what could end it. He thought, deactivating his dark matter wings. To the brown-haired boy's surprise, Naruto allowed himself to be drawn into the 40-meter-long sphere. Welt smiled at that. The sphere is the center itself, and the technique isn't physical for the backpacks. He couldn't do anything from the inside, just wait for the mass to increase until he could crush it. The boy thought, smiling. He knew that if he told Lioness his technique, he'd go for the most obvious and logical option, which was to destroy the sphere, but since the sphere was the black hole itself and wasn't physical, he clearly couldn't do anything. Upon entering the sphere, Naruto groaned in pain as he was instantly crushed. This thing was a living hell. The deeper he entered the sphere, which seemed to be multicolored from within as it absorbed the light from outside, the faster he was drawn to the center, but at the same time, the more gravity crushed him. It was like being between two indestructible walls that were slowly closing in and crushing him. The boy was holding on, until at that moment his nose, mouth, ears and even his eyes began to bleed at the same time that his body stopped moving. What the hell is this? It's unbearable, he thought, seeing that he was no longer moving, which said he was in the center of the entire sphere. The force of this place was very high, clearly not all that the technique could give since it still doesn't crush infinitely, but he was absolutely sure that the only reason he hadn't died is because of his high healing. But even so, he felt his bones being crushed to ash and rebuilt at the same speed. He could also feel each organ yielding to gravity and exploding, only to reappear a second later and continue to explode and regenerate in moments. This technique, he thought, smiling. Leaving that aside, he tightly gripped his sword, which was still intact despite everything he was going through. Now that I think about it, how will I get out of this? This thing is crushing me harder and harder, and little by little my regeneration is slower than the damage. At this rate, I'll be nothing but atoms. Even if I could survive, I don't want to find out if that's the case, he said, smiling painfully. I didn't know what I would do. The spheres seemed to be out of sight, and I couldn't cut through something I couldn't see, or for that matter, something I couldn't touch. As always, you rely on your past for this. Okay, remember. Hey, who? Naruto was going to say, for the voice in his mind that didn't seem to be any of the 1 a.m. had already spoken to him about, but he couldn't when $1 appeared in his mind and a wave of memories hit him. Flashback. A 12-year-old Naruto could be seen standing in front of a green-haired, apparently blacksmith. The man was pulling out a newly finished sword. Here it is, young man from Lion. The sword that pierces hell. Crafted from the most heat-resistant metal. Naruto, he said, staring at the sword. The silver-haired man's eyes were strange, the blue ones shaped like the lotus flower he had in Camelot over 3 years ago. His expression was emotionless and emotionless. His clothes were entirely black, shaped like an apparent cat. It would be a good outfit for the brat, he said in a different voice. It even seemed to be a voice that couldn't be described as gendered. Thank you, blacksmith, he said, smiling emotionlessly. Your creator has praised you. Be proud, giant. The giant man sweated at the boy's actions. He'd been talking like a god ever since he came to ask for a sacred treasure that was more spiritual than physical. The sword that pierces hell, blade. A strange name, but he wasn't one to judge others for things like that. You already know what the sword does, right? Its sharpness will be comparable to your intelligence and strategy. Its toughness will be comparable to your mental toughness. Its appearance will be comparable to your state of mind. And finally, what you know how to do will be something the sword can do. Your knowledge will be its knowledge. If you can throw fire, it can catch fire. If you can use darkness, you can cut darkness. That's all. Naruto. He smiled and looked at the sword. As expected of my creation's perfection after me. Although I would expect it more from a fairy, I never thought that a race as brutal as the giants would actually be good at anything other than fighting and beating each other up. The giant gained a tick on his forehead. Get out of the smithy, you crazy brat, he said angrily, pushing Naruto out of his smithy. The silver-haired boy stared at the door with no apparent emotion. I hope you thank me, brat. I'm making you as strong as possible to entertain me. In 2 years you'll come back and give me the best show you could possibly give, he said, smiling cruelly for the first time. With that, he swung his sword, seemingly slicing the world itself. If I can control space, I can cut through space. He smiled as he tucked the sword away on his back. Then he'd have to find a way to always have the sword with him, but not carry it around. End of flashback. Walt looked at his technique, which was beginning to encompass the entire giant cube. He wasn't worried because the technique didn't affect him, but he still had to deactivate it, or he would reach a point where he would absorb the cube and everything outside it. I should have deactivated it by now. I should have finished him off by now, he thought when, at that moment, his eyes saw something more unbelievable than his life. He saw how not only his black hole was cut, but the world itself seemed to split, and at the same time, his black hole. This is impossible! He thought when the black hole exploded, and at that moment a Naruto with his clothes almost destroyed and his body healing from almost being destroyed came out with the sword in his right hand that shone in a golden tone, while the lioness eyes were just as golden but without the white symbol common in the goddesses. Naruto smiled at the brown-haired boy. How about that? Asked the whelp, stunned by the impossible feat he had just seen the silver-haired boy perform. The way you did it, the black hole shouldn't be physical. It's like air, you wouldn't be able to do anything to it by cutting it, he said in amazement. Naruto looked at the boy seriously with his orange-gold eyes. That's true. That would be if I didn't have this sword. I cut everything I know, fire, darkness, light. As long as I know that, I can cut it. Topz understood the explanation. He cut through space. That means he knows how to manipulate it, she thought in amazement. Worried about her brother, she hit the barrier with her hand, but as expected, it didn't do anything. Well, stop this! Give this up or he'll kill you! She screamed, scared. The boy didn't respond. I won't listen to a traitor like you. You knew a threat of this level was here and you didn't say anything. You don't even dare call me brother. You're a traitor. Naruto watched the interaction between the two siblings without interest. Your last words before dying were that you don't consider her a sister and that she's a traitor? Good last words, he said mockingly as he walked towards Welt, who was looking at him with hatred. Ignoring the look of hatred on his face, he slashed swiftly past the boy, who literally lost his head. The head slowly rolled until it ended up in front of Topz, who stared at his brother's head, which had been cleanly severed. Lolo. You killed him, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. Naruto looked at her seriously. Her goddess eye without the white symbol disappeared and her only visible green eye reappeared. I told you. Everyone will pay for my revenge. The girl lowered her head. She couldn't win, and death was the only thing waiting for her. I am sorry, Naruto. I hope that by killing me, you can at least forgive me. The girl couldn't finish when her eyes widened in surprise and closed with a smile on her lips, her apparent last smile that would end her life. Elsewhere, you could see Kafka walking down a hallway filled with brutally wounded guards, not dead, but close to it. The only reason they were allowed to live was because they were useful. Where was Ironside? He thought as he put his finger to his lip in doubt. He must have run away with his king. The other boy's magic and his sister disappeared. That means Nero already killed him. He thought, looking around. I should finish here too. We're already way behind on this mission. He thought, his signature smile of pure calm and enigma adorning his delicate and beautiful features. Entering the king's chamber, he saw a scene he had never imagined. The king was lying dead on his throne, having received a cut to the chest that left him bleeding to death. Did they kill him? Where were his guards when he happened? He asked, to no one in particular. But the smell of corpses answered his question. And when he looked to his sides, he saw that both guards had died in their positions. They had actually been killed with a single blow. What do you think, Naru? Naruto entered through the large door of the throne room and looked at everything that had been done. Seeing the situation, I should assume it wasn't you, he said, his jacket in strips and his pants with one sleeve ripped at the knee and the other sleeve like shorts. Kafka, what makes you so sure? Naruto looked at the scene. The cut on his chest was from a straight sword like Welt's. Yours is curved and keeps unsheathing. When you defeat someone with your sword, you leave it out until you're finished, which you haven't done. The purple-haired woman smiled at the devastated silver-haired man. They gave you so much trouble, Naru. They must have been powerful. Naruto shrugged calmly. Well, it was a challenge. You'll be surprised to know that the black part of his black mage nickname wasn't for knowing forbidden spells, as we expected. The woman nodded. It was to be expected. All we knew about him was speculation. And what was his magical power? Black holes. He could create a mini black hole that grows at will. It seems that what you cut last afternoon was an unactivated black hole. And seeing your condition, I'm guessing you were sucked in. What's it like inside? Naruto sighed, remembering that feeling. It's like being pulled by two sodas at once on either side, leaving you stuck and unable to move, and then having two indestructible walls crushing you harder with each second. Kafka smiled as he walked to the throne where the dead man lay. That must have been painful. You're lucky. Naruto smiled at what the woman had said. It couldn't kill me. So it wasn't that useful. But it showed me that there are things capable of giving my healing ability a run for its money. Though I doubt it could kill me even at its maximum. It would reduce me to atoms, something that would give me days of regeneration. Kafka seemed interested. Technically, it's something capable of at least stopping you. I never thought I'd hear of anything like that. A technique capable of stopping you other than a seal is interesting. Naruto nodded at the woman's words. And how did you escape? Naruto thought for a moment. Technically, I cut through space and everything in it. So I forced the black hole to cut through space itself. Did you know I visited the giant blacksmith who created the eternal coffin? The woman shook her head. We started following your trail after rumors of an angel attacking the entire demonic realm. But from what you've heard, you already had your sword back then. The silver-haired man nodded. The purple-haired girl shamelessly made her pink strands begin to move her body from the seat, then she sat down in the empty seat and strangely cleaned herself. A wave of memories invaded me and I remembered when I was with the giant blacksmith, although at the same time I saw myself apparently possessed. Perhaps it was who Miss Kafka faced and captured, she said as she saw the queen's throne next to him. Sitting down, he sighed. I'm glad to hear your story. Little by little, you'll remember more of your past. Very soon, you'll know what you did during those 3 years while you were unconscious and controlled. The boy nodded. I'm actually getting closer to the truth, he thought, staring up at the ceiling. At that moment, footsteps were heard, and upon opening the door, a silver wolf with blood on her boots and hands could be seen looking at her companions disinterestedly. We're done, he said without interest. Naruto was confused. I can sense over 70% of the soldiers still alive, he said, and Silver Wolf shrugged. It seems they've surrendered. Their king is dead, most of their allies are dead, and the other one escaped, breaking the alliance between both sides in the process. That's why the common kingdom is without materials. They need a king and queen. And I'm not going to be one, he said, taking out his magical artifact called a cellular. Naruto and Kafka looked at each other, and the woman smiled. SWR Queen, it doesn't sound bad. What are you saying, Naru? The boy nodded. King. It's something I spent over 5 years preparing for as a child, so being one doesn't sound so bad, he said calmly, while something else was going through his head. King, huh? A smile appeared on his lips. Naruto, the King. Chapter 8. We find ourselves in the kingdom of Lionés, where something absurd was happening, and it was that the 4 knights of the apocalypse were about to finally face each other. Being a group that is destined to destroy the eternal world of King Arthur, their meeting was very important for the world. While this was happening in Lion, Naruto sat on his throne next to Kafka, doing what every king and queen should do when they take their thrones, taking requests from the people so he could help them. It would be easy, for both of them it was because they didn't seem to care. But it would be even easier, and most young boys and girls won't look at them as if they were going to be great at any opportunity. Deny mandatory training for knighthood and lower the age of entry, he read calmly and, looking at the woman who made the request, nodded. No one will be trained against their will, and the entry age will be raised to over 10 years old with requirements that will be clarified later, he said to the woman, who nodded. The silver-haired man looked at the long line of more than 2 kilometers. It was surprising how people made requests. As you know, if your request is similar to the one I just received, leave it by the door and leave the room. They will all be read later, he said calmly. The villagers nodded, and many left. Watching this, puzzled, a silver wolf entered the king's chamber and looked at the silver-haired man. I'm here, she said without interest. The boy responded to her disinterested look with his own. Yeah, 2 hours late. The girl shrugged as she finished the video game on her magical artifact. So, how are you? He asked, taking another petition and reading it. Silver Wolf, fine. Although if the mark disappeared, it could still be a profitable trade. Naruto nodded at the girl's conclusion. Continue managing funds for your personal business? He asked, looking doubtfully at the man in front of him. The man nodded happily. Yes. The king and I had this agreement. He helped me with buses, and I got a percentage of the money. I just want to know if the agreement is still valid. Naruto thought for a moment. We'll talk about that later, he said, watching as more people left. This time, only those on personal business should leave, he said, glancing up to see Silver Wolf standing next to him while she continued playing her video game. Don't let him escape. I'll come later. The gray-haired girl nodded and headed for the exit. Naruto looked at the man in front of him and was confused by the puppies in his hands. Setting him aside, he took his petition and read it aloud as usual. That puppies be allowed in certain types of businesses not related to food, cats, or hygiene? Naruto's sweat dropped at such a random request. The man in front of him simply blushed in embarrassment, apparently angering many of the other villagers. Maybe people with businesses, he thought, looking at Kafka, who still had his enigmatic yet friendly smile. He was used to that smile from having seen it for years, and he easily deciphered something. Miss Kafka smiled more at what was in her mind than what was outside. Although her mind was something very enigmatic, it wasn't impossible to understand, and he knew it well. Naruto, first, I remember more of my past. Now I'm a king, and above all, I'm getting closer to completing my revenge. I thought through a window, watching a bird begin to fly. Later, Naruto, Kafka, and Silver Wolf could be seen in a room. Odosart, the three of them said at the same time, and with that, the lights faded, leaving only the darkness that plunged the castle room into shadows. At that moment, 2 more shadows appeared in the room. One was the leader's, with his star-like blue eyes. The other eyes were heterochromatic, with 2 colors in each eye. This is the second time we've used this technique. If we continue like this, it'll become a trend, said the one with heterochromatic eyes, who was clearly a teenager of about 15 or 16 years old. March! Naruto greeted the shadow with heterochromatic eyes in a calm and cold manner. The shadow, now known as March 7th as the team nickname, looked at him and raised his hand in a gesture of respect, a shadowy smile appearing on his face. March, hello, senpai, said the girl happily. Silver Wolf simply popped the bubble on his lips. Shall we begin? The leader nodded. As expected. Complete the mission, and the future of Lioness has changed. That means King Arthur will have to make another move, he said calmly. This is the move we should pay most attention to. Everyone nodded at the leader's words. The problem here is knowing the move, Naruto said. Your vision isn't just of the future, but of universal possibilities and alternatives, mostly being seeing the future just the luck of one in an infinite number of alternatives. Any vision could be from an alternate universe, and that could put us at a disadvantage by preparing for an attack that won't happen or only happens in another universe. Kafka, besides the points Nara mentioned, Arthur has Fu Xian, the all-seeing force. She should easily know every checkpoint, location, and weakness of Lioness and any kingdom. She can create any plane to attack since she has all their strengths and weaknesses in her grasp. This leaves us at an even greater disadvantage. Especially since Fu Xian must also be watching us, she already has a fixed location on us. Naruto stared up at the ceiling. Omniphobia was always interesting, he thought, smiling at the ability that would help him regain his memory if he could force the girl to use it. It allows him to move his consciousness to every part of the past or present in all realms of existence. Its only limits are after birth and the present. But unfortunately for the omnipotent girl, she couldn't see or hear things that weren't there, so both what her leader said and March 7th were things she wouldn't hear unless she knew the transfer technique. It was obvious that Fu Xian was watching them, or at least, he must be looking at every part of the castle to find them and their meeting. March, it would be best to join Lion as an alliance. We had a fixed kingdom, so we can't be hunted anymore, or there'll be a war. That's in our favor, he said confidently. Naruto, I doubt it. Do you really think everyone will let go of your 2.9 trillion gold coins? Or Silver Wolf's 5.1 trillion and my 8.13 trillion? Except for Kafka's 10 plus trillion and the leader's 100 plus trillion. It's clear they'll keep hunting us. Only the Holy Knights should leave us alone for now. Naruto's right. We're still the most wanted group in the world. It's clear they won't just leave us like that, he said, and the girl nodded, pouting slightly. While March isn't a bad idea, joining Lionés is fine until I see a possibility or a reliable alternative. Or hopefully the future, he said calmly. He only saw the future a few times. Fewer than 10, he could say, and luckily the attack on Lioness was one of those rare times where he saw the future and not just a handful of possibilities and alternatives. March, so we're all going to Lion? No. Only Naruto will go, as leader. Silver Wolf and you as companions, although he's not very reliable. I had a vision. The subordinates looked at their boss, waiting for a vision of an alternate future, or their own future. The vision will take place in 2 days. It's about 2 ancient commandments being revived by Chaos to attack the 4 knights of the apocalypse and a supposed prisoner of the lioness who holds a key to the eternal realm. Upon hearing the last part, everyone, without changing their expression, became serious. Then we'll act starting tomorrow. Now we must address the second topic. The currency of exchange. Kafka continued with a smile at the mention of currency of exchange. Naruto, it's obvious. King Arthur won't care about his life and won't give us anything in return. It's better to get rid of a nuisance, he said coldly. Silver Wolf, I agree. She'll be of no use to us alive, he said, supporting the lioness at his side. He didn't say anything, thanking his companion for his support. He knew she supported him because she wanted the girl dead more than her opinion. The leader thought this. That's true. Naruto smiled inwardly at his leader's response. But she can help us more than you think. That made Naruto doubt, and an inner hatred surfaced. Clearly, his emotion was angered by that. She has friends and family within the eternal realm. Seeing that her king didn't give his all to save her the way she would have will help us convince companions or friends to leave Camelot. That would give us more allies and even a possible spy within. Naruto snorted inwardly. It's unnecessary, he thought angrily. They could devastate all of Camelot in seconds. The only problem inside was the increased skill of some knights and the king himself. But speaking of raw power, everyone in this room could easily crush any knight in Camelot. Kafka, fine. Nero agrees too, right? The boy nodded calmly. It's a good plan. But if it doesn't work, he'll die instantly, Naruto said, even more seriously. But everyone in the room understood Naruto's deep hatred for his bargaining chip. Okay. That concludes the meeting, the leader said, as he began to disappear. March, beside the leader, began to disappear, waving goodbye to the silver-haired man. The girl with heterochromatic eyes disappeared, along with the leader with starlike blue eyes, as the leader flew out the window into the almost completely dark sky. The lights came back on in the room. Without saying anything, Naruto stood up from his seat and left the room, leaving only Kafka and Silver Wolf, who looked at each other. Do you think he didn't like the option we took? The young hacker asked, both disinterested and interested. Kafka nodded with his signature smile. Clearly he didn't like it. But he'll accept it. Neru is very good at separating his private and professional life, the woman said with a calm smile. Silver Wolf nodded. I'll go with him. Just in case. The woman watched his retreat with her eyes covered in enigma as they usually were. Narahihi. Her voice sounded distinctly playful and possessive. Something that was new to anyone who had ever heard her speak. Only she herself knew of this possessiveness she displayed toward others. And it would remain so for a long time to come. With Naruto. Naruto could be seen arriving at a gate of the castle. Upon opening it, the boy entered the room where, surprisingly, a Topz was sitting on the bed, her legs and hands tied, with no way of escape thanks to the anti-magic handcuffs used to detain wizards. The girl was surprised when she saw the silver-haired man from Lion enter. She woke up a few minutes ago and found herself lying in this bed. "Naruto, you didn't kill me," she said confusedly as, with her hand tied, she crawled toward the boy and stood in front of the bed. Naruto ignored him. Taking a seat next to the bed, he sat down calmly. "You're alive, unfortunately," he said seriously. Topz was surprised by that decision. When tears began to flow from her eyes, she smiled. That means dash." "No." Naruto cut her off. "You'll be a bargaining chip. When you're done, you'll die," he said seriously. Once he'd finished, he stood up from his seat and started to leave the room, but the girl's voice interrupted him. Turning around, he saw the girl's face, which looked sad. "Yes, I helped them. At least you'd forgive me, even if you killed me." The boy didn't respond. He finished walking out of the room, leaving the girl who hung her head in sadness and closed her eyes, letting the tears fall. "I deserve it," she thought, smiling sadly. Outside the room, the boy sighed. "You're confused. Are you doubting something?" Naruto heard the voice of his fellow Silver Wolf and looked at her seriously. "I don't doubt anything. I'll have my revenge, and she'll die, regardless of what she does to try to earn my forgiveness." "Silver Wolf, that's a little unfair. You said she had nothing to do with it, and she just didn't confess. Doesn't that make her innocent?" "Only he's worse than them. It's their fault this is happening," he said, moving away from the door and starting to walk away. Silver Wolf followed close behind him to continue their conversation. "I won't tell you what to do, it's your revenge after all. But you should consider his forgiveness. They were his brothers, and anyone with brothers should understand what he did. After all, we do stupid things for our family." Naruto stopped at those idiotic yet true words. The boy would have said something, but he chose to remain silent and continued on his way, accompanied by Silver Wolf, who followed him equally silently. "It's not very common for you to give advice on forgiveness and hatred. What happened to that fun, eccentric, and arrogant Silver Wolf?" The girl smiled proudly. "The best and strongest Chaos Hunter, still here, idiot. Never forget that," she said, smiling as she pointed at herself with her thumb. They both smiled as they continued on their way through the spacious castle. Elsewhere. So that's his current home. How stupid, hiding for years only to let us find him just like that. I speak in the now adult King Arthur, who now, where his missing arm was a kind of golden glove, being the only significant change in his appearance for more than 7 years. "So it seems, Your Majesty." A pink-haired girl with a pink gem on her forehead spoke in a very hostile tone. Even when she was speaking to her king, which angered Ironside, who was standing next to King Arthur's throne. This girl wore a white dress with brown trim and gold constellation designs. She wore white tights with cloud designs, white class gloves with level designs, and crescent moon designs in her hair. Her eyes were golden, and the pearl on her head was pink, matching her hair perfectly. The orange-haired man didn't seem to notice or ignore the unfriendly tone. "Did you hear anything interesting in their conversation?" The all-seeing girl named Fu Xian frowned. "Yes. Apparently they did kill Welt," she said seriously. Instead of seeming worried or upset that one of his most promising heroes had died, the king simply smiled. That seemed to anger the girl even more. This man really got on her nerves, but she had to put up with it. Her sister's life was at stake. "Yes. Apparently they didn't kill Topz. They want to use her as an exchange of some kind. I don't know why. It also seems they're going to lionés for an alliance or something else." He said he would be skipping the part about the Chaos Hunter leader's ability. He'd already told him enough to keep him from getting suspicious and letting his sister die. He was just helping him enough to keep his sister alive, that was all he was doing. Arthur smiled at the information. Fine, if that's the case, I want the remains of those 2 commandments so they can finally pay for their sins toward humanity. Especially the one who destroyed part of Camelot in his battle with the Sins back then. He's the one who should pay the most for his sins. In a few minutes, a dead, nearly dried up viper and a stone head covered in armor with horns and dull eyes fell in front of him. Good. In the name of Chaos. Chapter 9. Fu Xian could be seen coming out of the castle that was Camelot, walking calmly through the place that was the Eternal Kingdom. The most perfect way to describe it was a great and enigmatic enigma. Literally, the places were completely separated. There were floating islands horizontally and vertically. They were even downwards, but even so, gravity had no effect on her. It wouldn't make much difference if it worked, after all, he can fly. Asta! I'm here, he said, entering a house with the same enigmatic shape as the entire Eternal Kingdom that was Camelot. Fu Xian! A voice came happily from above the pink-haired girl. Fu Xian looked up at a girl with blue eyes and salmon-colored hair with a braid on the left side who responded to his greeting. From her height and voice, the girl appeared to be about 16 years old. Her attire consisted of a short dress that reached above her thighs. The upper part of the dress was sleeveless and white, decorated with a black bow and some purple designs. It had 2 sleeves on each hand, also white, with a seemingly purple tint inside. The lower part was black with a gold constellation print as decoration. From her waist, a veil, similar to a wedding dress, fell to her feet, not touching the ground. The veil was white, but with a pink section, and a purple belt around her waist contrasted with both parts of the dress. She also had some kind of telescope on hand, due to her apparent fascination with the constellations. If the designs and the telescope could speak for themselves. What are you doing up there, Asta? The pink-haired girl asked, looking at her younger sister, who was at the top of the house. She could only see her through the gap in the center of the house, but that was normal in the structures of the Eternal Kingdom of Camelot. The girl named Asta smiled back. Why did King Arthur summon you? Fu Xian floated as her golden eyes began to glow with a pink hue to end up next to her younger sister who appreciated the empty and totally white sky of the Eternal Kingdom. Are you okay? He asked in a cold but concerned manner. He knew this, even though she wouldn't show it, bothered his sister. She had always loved the sky and its answers, and having to live in a place where the only color in the sky was the white color that covered the great eternal dimension must have bothered her inside, even when she didn't show it. Asta, of course I am. My illness isn't progressing in here, and I don't feel pain as often, he said with a smile that didn't convince Fu Xian at all. You know that's not what I'm talking about, he said, then looked away. Ever since the Chaos Hunters and the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse began their indirect attacks on the kingdom, no one who isn't a knight can leave the kingdom. Asta, and I can't go see the constellations and stars of Britannia. It doesn't matter, I'm used to it, she said, giving her sister a happy smile, who did the same. Besides, if I got out, my illness would still affect me, and being in here would be in vain. Fu Xian frowned at the memory of that. As King Arthur said, if your sister was beyond cure, the best you could do was leave her within the eternal realm, or live out her final days outside of it. And while she wanted the former, she knew that leaving her sister without what she loved most for eternity wasn't fair. That's why he's trying to find a way to help her. Britain's greatest healers can't cure her, but there's a chance. If Blade, now known as Naruto, lionesses, if that boy managed to become immortal, there's a chance he could do something similar with his sister, or so he hoped. Fu Xian, I just have to find a day to go see the living dead, he thought, looking at his sister who was still staring at the boring, completely white sky. Smiling kindly, he stood by her side and gave her a hug that wasn't very common for her. Asta received the hug, a little surprised but happy. Sister, you didn't answer my first question, she said, remembering that. Fu Xian nodded, breaking away from the sister's embrace. King Arthur wanted me to keep an eye on the Chaos Knights. It seems we'll be moving completely against the other races, she said earnestly. Her sister nodded calmly. I hope everything goes well, she thought, then sighed. This completely white sky is nothing like the British sky, which had so many star patterns it would drive anyone crazy. The next day, Naruto and Silver Wolf could be seen apparently walking towards lionés. The two young men were walking calmly. They were near a village that apparently sold the best wine in all of Britain, or so Naruto heard from his father a while ago. Silver Wolf, why did we walk all the way to Lion instead of just teleporting? I asked doubtfully. Naruto, I'm no good at long-distance teleportation. We could end up inside a wall and explode from the unbalanced fusion of atoms, he said, jumping from the edge of the ravine to land on his feet, and Silver Wolf did the same. Remember that teleportation is a way of moving and dividing ourselves at the atomic level under a space-time rift that sends us to a realm where time is irrelevant until we reach our goal and then rebuilds us atom by atom. Silver Wolf listened calmly to everything. Is something wrong? You haven't said anything about being better than me, and you already knew all that, the silver-haired man said, surprised, as he entered the village. Silver Wolf shook his head. It's nothing. Just thinking about it. Since when can you think? He asked amusedly, earning an elbow from the dangerous girl who snorted in annoyance. You're getting more and more of an idiot every day, he said, but smiled. At least you're not as emo as you used to be. Naruto snorted. I'm only serious on a mission. It doesn't mean I'm emo, I just separate my personal and professional life, he said calmly. He knew when to be professional and when to be personal, and right now, he was a person. Yes. I know that well, otherwise you would have killed the currency of exchange. From that very day, she said, amused. Naruto. He's still going to die. He's just lucky enough to have a few more days, he said, leaving the village behind. At this rate, they'd reach Lioness this very afternoon. Or so they should. Silver Wolf shook his head. You really don't plan on leaving that behind? If you continue with this blind revenge, you'll fall into an abyss from which you won't be able to escape. And the abysses of revenge are the deepest. Naruto stopped and looked at her strangely. Where is Silver Wolf and who are you? He asked in a normal voice, but received another blow to the ribs. Silver Wolf, just because I'm young doesn't make me stupid. I have a brilliant mind, she said with a haughty smile. But, you don't believe it? From the silver-haired man earned her an angry tick on her forehead. You're an idiot. Naruto gave a small smile, his cold eyes brightening with happiness. We're here, he said, seeing the lioness gates. Silver Wolf was surprised to see the gates to the lioness kingdom. But how? I asked, amazed. We only left the village 10 minutes ago. At the rate we were going, it must have taken at least an hour. Naruto smiled. I use teleportation, he said, amused. The girl looked at him and frowned. But you said you couldn't. Naruto, I didn't use it to appear here. Instead, I used it repeatedly over short distances, taking advantage of when you closed your eyes to do it like this. I cut 1 hour into 10 minutes, he said as he entered. Silver Wolf entered beside him. This went unnoticed by the guards, perhaps because he didn't care about her or his card game. Either one would do. Hey Naruto. Should we head to the castle right away? The gray-haired girl asked. Naruto, it's the best idea. March 7th will be here in less than an hour, it's best to act before it arrives, he said calmly. Silver Wolf looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Don't you want your apprentice around when you're doing business? Or would your mother notice you like him? He asked mockingly. Though the last bit was more than a joke, it was a subtle hint of his subconscious. Naruto didn't react to what was said. First, March isn't my student. I only raise her so she can become part of us faster. And second, I'm not interested in anything like that. Silver Wolf smiled mischievously. Of course. And not with Miss Kafka? Naruto didn't reply. I knew it. Naruto, I don't like Miss Kafka. We're just co-workers. Nothing more, he said calmly as he looked around. He felt something strange in the air. It was a smell he always smelled but that never embraced him. Death, he thought alertly. Looking up at the sky, A light briefly blinded them both, and then it cleared. Naruto was surprised, not by the bright attack, but by the person who launched it. Tristan! In the sky. Tristan could still be seen, already a teenager at 16 years old. His attire consisted of a suit of armor worn over a yellow shirt with blue royal family prints and white trim. His pants were black and long, but covered to the knees by the same silver armor jolts. On his back, for white wings, like the one he has, helped him fly, the upper two being larger than the lower two. In front of him was a boy who appeared to be about 8 years old. His stature was short, as was his body, and he had a dark sphere on his face that seemingly blinded him. His clothing consisted of an orange suit with a cape of the same color, and a symbol on the side, and his notes were the same orange. The two young men looked as if they were about to fight. But Tristan was more than surprised. I speak the demonic language, but the light has no effect on him, thought the adolescent Tristan. But at that moment, a butt from the boy to his chest made him step back. But quickly recovering in an instant, Tristan was already behind the boy while he had an X on his chest from 2 cuts from the 2 swords in the hands of the long silver-haired lionés. The boy fell to the ground because of the wound and Tristan climbed down next to him. Mr. Tristan, we must finish it, said a boy with dark hair, red tips, and a lock of hair blocking his left eye, while his right eye, which was visible, revealed his light wine-colored eyes. The boy, lying on the ground, held his hand, which was thin and almost dead. I hate spilling blood. I hate spilling more blood than necessary, said the long-haired, silver-haired man. The boy with the sphere of darkness on his head stood up and began repeating incoherent words in the demonic language. We must finish him off now, said the dark-haired man with red spots named Kaisen. Seeing this, Tristan prepared to attack, but the 3 injured boys stood on either side of the child to protect him. We won't let them, the redhead of the group choked out, his chest bruised. His left arm was the most injured, while the 2 girls at his side, who were similar to him, nodded in agreement. Tristan, what are you doing? You're mortally wounded, you should stay away, he's not normal, he said, worried for the lives of the 3 boys. The blue-haired girl smiled, still hurt, and hugged the apparently 8-year-old boy with the sphere of darkness. Even if he's not normal, he's still Percival, he said, while Tristan was surprised, as were the other 2 boys next to him and Kaisen. The magic wave stopped? The girl asked, feeling the tension ease. The redhead from the now-named Percival's group got visibly angry with the other group. What's wrong with you? That's what they call themselves, holy knights. Percival is a knight of the apocalypse. Boom! The redhead couldn't finish. Suddenly and painfully, the 4 young men in Percival's group fell to the ground. Meanwhile, a kind of dark magical pressure fell on them, crushing them even further into the ground. You should measure how you win with the holy knights. It doesn't matter that a knight's duty is to protect civilians like you, they are superior to you in every way, Naruto said, turning a corner. Tristan, hey, stop. He was going to say he's a knight of the apocalypse. Tristan also paused at that point in his sentence to see who had cast the technique that had kept his former enemies down. Naruto looked at the person who spoke to him, and they both widened their eyes at each other. They both stared at each other in surprise, either of them able to believe what they were seeing. Tristan didn't seem to believe it, while Naruto was more surprised for not being ready. He didn't think about this moment. What would I do? How would you react? These were things he hadn't thought about. But now that he needed an answer to these questions, he cursed himself for not preparing sooner. From his thoughts, his magic on the injured boys stopped, and both Naruto and Tristan approached. And Naruto, you? It didn't end when he hugged him. He was speechless at the moment, and decided to do what he wanted most. Naruto was a little surprised by his brother's response upon seeing him. Tristan, Naruto whispered softly. But how? We're looking for you all over Britain, how are you? Naruto smiled kindly. Something he stopped doing a long time ago. Silly little brother, I'd clearly be alive. Who do you take me for? He said, smiling sincerely. Tristan smiled. It's true, he said, wiping away the few tears that threatened to fall. Let Mom see you coming, she'll be happy, he said, very excited. But a groan of pain from beside him made him notice the group still badly injured, lying on the ground. Worried, Tristan used his magical power of light on the boys and began healing them, and they were better now. The 4 young men managed to get through. Everyone's fine, said the Choco from Combra Percival, who was without the sphere of darkness on his head. He had light green hair with 2 strands on each side like wings. Naruto looked at that. Tristan is good at light magic, he thought, looking at the healthy boys. With everyone fine, Tristan looked at Percival seriously. Is it true you're a knight of the apocalypse? Naruto squinted at the boy. I think so. That's what the others say, he said in a way that looked like Naruto from years ago. Naruto, 2 knights here. Who are the others? They must surely be somewhere in Britain and… Naruto was cut off when Tristan spoke. Cool. I'm one too.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.